everyone, and welcome to RLAfterShock, the longest running independent podcast for everything that is Rocket League esports in the European scene. I'm the Eternal J. I'm joined by the Digital Bacon for episode 75 of the fucking show, man. And I mean, I'm just going to preface this right now. It's been a really shitty week. My patience has really just fucking hit like lowest levels ever. So I'm just going to be a fucking really snappy little bitch in this show, Bacon. You know, more than ever before. You know, like the fucking like everything has happened this week that could have gone wrong, and I'm just fucking just so low on patience, really. How's your week been, mate?
My week was definitely much better. The only thing was I may have this morning finally bit a nail and cut my hair, Jay.
Oh.
You won't see us until Thursday, of course, when we do Belong.
Have you gone full fucking? Have you gone full fucking? Okay.
I like bought clippers. Did it on the low, like what's the lowest set, the longest setting on the clippers. You know, to try and just do that. The front, I'm really impressed with myself. Like the front is all fine. The back, which you're not going to be able to see on camera, is like a barn fire, I reckon. Because trying to do like a double mirror setup just does not work. But I'm pretty proud of myself. It would just be funny come around Thursday.
Yeah, I'm curious now because like a part of me is semi-concerned because like everyone's been going for the whole like, you know, cut my own hair thing, and then everyone's just been doing like the full like Steve Austin. I'm just like, fuck me.
Yeah.
So you know, like no, please, you look terrible. So like I was scared that you've gone down that route. But fortunately, you haven't. No. So therefore, I think I can be happy that the we won't see that bullshit today. Anyway. It's the 75th episode of the show, Bacon. We're 25 off the big 100, and I don't know why it is, but it seems like every 25 episodes are just the cursed ones. I look back through the show notes, and there's just so much shit to talk about for each of those ones, and a lot of drama as well, which of course is a part of the show today. We're talking about the Richard Lewis and Liefx drama, of course, to start off the show. As well as that, we're also talking about the roster shakeups and rumors in the scene as of late. As well as that, we're talking about the Superstar League a little bit later on during the show as we go to break down the first couple of weeks of action for that, all here on the 75th episode of RLAfterShock. So let's start with the news. And I'll preface this by saying, look, if you don't want your perspective challenged today, I recommend you turn off the show right now or just skip to the next timestamp because I've seen a lot of stubborn little bitches surrounding this particular topic. No one wants to be enlightened. No one wants to debate anything, which seems to be the case across the entire Rocket League scene this week. It's not just on this particular topic. But, you know, I'm just saying right now, if you're not willing to have a different perspective of things, if you're not willing to listen and potentially debate that, just skip because I can't be asked. I really can't be fucked this week. Richard Lewis versus Liefx. How the fuck do you start with this one? So basically, it's a typical, for me at least, it's a typical level of Richard Lewis dealing with people who don't want to get informed sort of story. He tweets talking about this League of Legends drama between TSM and their employers, Doublelift and Lena. Doublelift plays for the team. Lena is their president. Doublelift and Lena are dating. And very, very recently, a lot of journalists have been calling that out as a very clear conflict of interest, which it absolutely is. And Liefx wanted to pipe up and ask him, you know, why it is, what the problem is. And you can take a look at this thread if you want to. You know, it's the standard sort of back and forth between Richard and Leaf. And right, I'm going to start just by saying, look, if you're going to get involved in a conversation, like the least you could do is probably take a look at the basic materials surrounding that conversation so you can kind of get an understanding as what's going on. Because when all that material is already out there, I don't really feel like it's the right move to just pester and annoy the hell out of the individual that is the reporter of that topic to relink all those materials when 2 seconds of Google search could give you access to all that information. And that's probably the crux of this issue right here, because rather than take the moment to self-educate, to me it looks like Liefx basically just wasn't informed, didn't want to get informed, and as a result just kept pestering Richard, who is already receiving hell for this just by the manner of stating TSM, which is one of the worst fan bases in the world. You're probably getting a lot of shit already, so your fuse is probably going to be a little bit short. And for me that seems to be the main issue here. is that Richard snapped, and rightfully so. I'm not going to debate the fact that he that whether he was right or wrong. Personally, I feel like he was. Whether he should have been an arsehole, that's up to you to decide. Personally, I don't think that's the case. But the bottom line is that Liefx got blocked, and then the massive shitstorm hit the rest of the Rocket League scene because suddenly everyone started getting blocked because they started to agree with Liefx, and Richard being Richard and him having his own personal account decided, I'm just going to block you all because I can't be arsed with this shit. Basically, it went on a big rampage of everybody tweeting, everybody going at Richard, basically saying, "Hey, I've been blocked. I've been blocked. Wait, I've been blocked. I've been blocked. I've been blocked. I've been blocked." And it's like, fucking the Rocket League scene being absolute fucking dribbling idiots. Basically, it just became a meme.
Like, it was back in the day, you remember, with stuff like, I remember Drama Alert posting whoever of the casters or pro players had blocked them. It felt like it was more of a status symbol that you've been blocked by Richard Lewis in this case. It was very odd.
By the way. It absolutely fucking isn't. He's a one man. He's not exactly a politician or a world leader or anything like that. He's a dude who just reports the fucking news, gives his opinion sometimes a controversial opinion, but an opinion nonetheless. And since we all value opinions, apparently, we should, hear him out and listen. No. That's not what happened at all. He went on his podcast By the Numbers and said that Rocket League are the latest dribbling, deranged fan base to come at him, which actually was the thing that kind of got me, because I saw Virtuoso tweet about this saying, Rocket League aren't dribbling idiots, they aren't deranged at all. And I'm just like, when you've got all these people fucking tweeting the same shit, Richard Lewis has blocked me party, Richard Lewis is over party, like, to reply here if Richard blocked you. It's like, I'm no expert, I have my own mental illnesses myself, but I'm no expert. That seems a little bit like it's fucking deranged, just entertain the idea that maybe he might have a point, just think about it like that, because to me it seems a little bit fucking deranged.
I mean, every community has a little subset of people like that, we have to say. So I can understand where Virtuoso is coming from, but Jay, from Counter-Strike, you get the same sort of people. Same with League of Legends, all of that sort of lot. So just rest it on there.
That's the thing, right? Because I don't believe the Virtuoso is a deranged individual. I don't think actually most of the people that I interacted with on this particular topic are deranged or otherwise, salty or anything like that. I think they're actually pretty educated and well sort of, well-spoken individuals, and I've had my debates with those people, and we've had some back and forth about it, but I also think if you're not one of those people, then it might just be a good idea to have the intelligence to realize that when he's talking about the Rocket League fan base are deranged, he's not applying to you, the smart intellectual who doesn't have shit about, doesn't post shit about getting blocked on Twitter. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of common sense that probably needs to be applied to certain bits of these, because honestly, when you're talking about generalizations, I always constantly say that Reddit are fucking idiots, which they are. It's but that does not mean that you who browses Reddit is a fucking idiot. If you're listening to this show, I think you're one of the good guys, you probably don't say stuff like Sandrock are the best team in the world and make that stupid thread that fortunately got downvoted to all hell, which highlighted a 2v2 match where it was like Sandrock won it, and it was like, to explain the dominance of Sandrock Gaming and how they're the best team in the world, take a look at this Johnny Boy VOD. And it's like, shit like that is who we refer to when we talk about stuff like being deranged and idiots, in being an idiot or whatever have you, whatever sort of generalization you want to make. Those are the people we're talking about. We're not talking about the average person, because honestly, the average person is pretty reasonable. And if you got caught up in this and you think you're pretty reasonable, just maybe rethink your position from here. If you're blocked by Richard, I'm sorry, that's happened to you. Maybe you might get a redemption arc. I was blocked by Richard once, at one point.
Oh, because you were following some Overwatch caster or whatever.
That's basically what it was.
Richard blocks more people than he follows. That's just a straight up fact. So
I'm pretty sure at this point, based off of that little number. I mean, maybe it might be true. I mean, I haven't got any evidence to back that up. But the bottom line is that maybe you might have your redemption arc, and if you do get that redemption arc, maybe just take a look back on this moment and think, was I being 100% reasonable? Because I think there were a lot of people that absolutely weren't, and I'm happy to call those people out, because fucking hell, man, this week the Rocket League scene on the whole have just been fucking new levels of absolute idiocy. Like, you know, that Richard Lewis thread was just the start of it. There was one guy, a guy called Marco, who is somebody, I don't know. Like, you know, he basically turned around to me basically by saying, like, you know, I have no right to call anyone deranged because I look like the Big Show after 4 months in the wilderness, which is always, you know, the highest level on the hierarchy of disagreement. You know, and that name calling and insulting appearances is just refuting the central point at all, isn't it? You know, which I had my good response to that, but it's just like, you know, just idiots like that is who the fuck I'm talking about when I mention these things. And Reddit themselves have also seemed to be just on a fucking new level of it, because obviously they bought that thread that went up there, which was that video that highlighted sort of what was going on, even though it really wasn't. It was just some guy being really fucking stupid and posting the same video on every single subreddit in the hopes of the Reddit clout. And we were the only community that bought that clout. Like, come on, guys. I expected us to be a little bit better than just to buy the basics and, you know, look past things, because that's what I thought Rocket League were. Like, we all act like we're high and mighty, like we're all, you know, involved in this big scene and we're all fucking experts. But then as soon as someone comes along and says, you know, Richard Lewis is a bully, and everyone just says, oh yeah, sure, because he insulted Liefx. Guys, remember, Liefx was the guy who stepped off originally, and Liefx was the guy that didn't bother to get informed.
I will say, though, on that topic, like, the replies, Richard didn't help himself. Like, it was very blunt, and like you said, he sort of snapped at it. So there's also that aspect of Richard should have just, like, not replied at all after the first one, just stepped away. But I mean, everyone gets those moments. You know,
here's the thing, right? I think Richard can do whatever the hell he wants. I don't care. You know, I wasn't going to get involved originally. I don't agree with his particular behavior, but at the end of the day, it's his Twitter, it's his thread, it's his timeline, it's his tweet. He can do whatever the hell he likes, as far as I'm concerned, and that includes blocking everybody. Yeah. Which, you know, like that's just the way it rolls. You know, you can block anybody who you want, who you think is being an arsehole or otherwise insulting, and he has the same right to do that on his own particular timeline. Now, Richard doesn't give a fuck, right? You know, his arrogance that he posts up is mostly just a bait, as far as I'm aware. Like, you know, he just doesn't care about what you think about him. And like, you know, even though it might seem like what people call a man child, the truth of the matter is that he's just playing up to it, to me, as far as I know, you know, as far as I can see.
It's good for his brand.
Absolutely, absolutely is. Absolutely is. Like, you know, and you fucking idiots took the bait again on Reddit and on Twitter. Like, come on, guys. Like, you know, be a bit smarter. Like, it's basic, right? And again, everyone thinks they're fucking smart. You know, they just buy this shit every single time. It's fucking stupid. Even today, actually, so the last couple of days, I was having a debate with somebody who also believes that they're very, very smart about the way that they handle Rocket League stuff. I think he was in agreement with the whole Richard Lewis thing. And obviously, me and him had a crack at each other and Reddit for a completely different topic, which I won't get into today. But if you find that exchange, it really highlights exactly how stupid people can be. Really, really fucking stupid people can be.
Yep. I have no more, because I just look at this and go, it's just silly. I want to move on to the next one, Jay.
Yes, I think it was a bit too big to ignore, though, because like, you know, just the factor of who Richard is, and obviously with everything that happened, obviously the entire community fucking lit on fire, and, you know, just a bit of self-perspective, just to say, look, now that we've all calmed down a little bit, can we just reflect and have a look exactly what it is that we just fought for, and what exactly it is we lost and gained in this particular fight? Because personally, I don't think that, you know, we succeeded in anything, all in all. Anyway.
You can't succeed in anything with that sort of thing, you know. It's just people shouting at each other. You're not going to get anywhere.
Okay, small insert into the original show, since while we recorded this on Tuesday afternoon, and of course this particular story came out on Tuesday night. So let's talk a little bit about the seedings for Fusion Bacon. I mean, look, right. Oh, fucking hell. Like, where do we start with this shit? Where the fuck do we start with this shit?
The problem we've got right now is we don't enjoy shitting on Fusion. Like, it definitely seems like we do, but we don't. Realistically, we want the best for this tournament, but just one thing after the other keeps on stacking up, Jay. And we look at this and go, I guess it's getting a little bit more gimmicky heavy, but that doesn't, like, fix the problem across the whole thing, does it?
No, it doesn't. And as soon as this hit the fucking scene, as soon as the results here, you know, from the from the bracket came out, like everyone looked at this whole thing and was like, "What the fuck is this?" Because the seedings seem very, very fucking suspicious, don't they? Really, really fucking suspicious. First seed, Renault Vitality. Second seed, Dignitas. Okay, that's pretty fair.
Mm-hmm.
Third seed, Sandrock.
Oh, no.
Do you wonder why I talk about conflict of interest on this fucking show? Do you ever wonder why it bothers me, the fact that there are sponsors owning teams in their own fucking tournaments? Does it ever wonder you why these things get a little bit concerning for me? Do you ever wonder what else is going on behind the scenes that we might not be aware about from the public surface?
But Jay, European Invitational, buddy. Sandrock Gaming came runners-up.
Fuck you. if you're using that as a fucking excuse as to why this is a real thing, then just fuck off, will you? Just fuck off, will you? You are fucking deluded. You are stupid. Get out of my fucking conversation. Furthermore, I realize that people are saying that Oakley and Ahmed are the best 1s and 2s players in the world. Firstly, there aren't enough 2s competitions to fucking say that. Okay, it seems like everyone's basing their fucking things off of the fucking rankings that we have in the rank system, which seems to be the basis for everything in this fucking scene. Apparently, it's like, hold on, when was that ever pertinent to esports in any other scene? Right? And it's like Oakley being the best 1v1 player. Okay, he won Salt Mine. Okay. What else? You know? He fucking lost to Joreuz the other day. He won against Revzy, who, you know, has not been in the picture for a fucking significant player ever. Like, what the fuck? What's the fucking justification here? You know, like, you know, what is the justification of having this team be so high above the likes of Mousesports, who have fucking, you know, the best, one of the most highest potential threes teams in the world, right? None of them have a 1v1 basis. You're saying they got knocked down because none of them are play 1v1s. What about Singularity with Scrub Killa, the winner of both of the fucking 12 Titans tournaments, the biggest and the best and the highest caliber 1v1s tournaments in the world? Is that irrelevant because it's too old? Yeah. Well, Salt Mine happened in December. That's well over 5 months ago. I consider that very fucking old in my book. Like, well, what's the justification here? No one has given me a legitimate reason other than just a generic, they're the best 1v1 and 2v2 players, okay? Like, come on. Come the fuck on. Like, what the hell is this shit? This is absolute bollocks. And it speaks volumes. Even if there is a legitimate reason and system behind this whole thing, it doesn't matter that there is one, right? Because the fucking sponsor of the tournament is Sandrock Gaming. It's in Civic, right? What is the chances that he's fucking asked Johnny to put this as high as he really has, okay? That is the problem here. The fact that I'm asking this question is the problem with this tournament, okay? It doesn't matter what justification you want to put behind seedings and 2v2s and 1v1s, which, by the way, who the hell should say 1v1 and 2v2 should have equal seeding and equal parity to 3v3, which is the de facto game mode of the entire fucking game and the entire esport. You don't see any other significant tournament worth their salt that's not run by Johnny Boy be in 1v1 or 2v2. So what is this fucking excuse then?
So, Jay, as well, again, just straight from Johnny Boy, what you don't realize is that this is not 3v3s. This is a crew battle. That does not justify this. The idea being that, yes, it's split across all three. I can understand the 1v1 aspect because you do have a little bit of basis off, but still there with Sandrock Gaming, third seed, like you said. When you look at Spring Series, just gone on by, Sandrock... If Sandrock were 10th seed, Jay, I think both me and you could look at that and probably go, yeah, sure, we'll allow.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, like
that wouldn't have been a problem.
If we're going to wait 1v1 and 2v2 into the factor of seeding, then absolutely, I think 10th seed is a very, very fair sort of seeding for Sandrock Gaming, right? But you're taking a look at adding a seeding and giving it so much parity to players that don't really have any fucking, basis in 1v1 and 2v2. How many of these teams have competed in 2v2? Like, the best thing you're probably looking at is something along the lines of fucking, what's that tournament? The one that got run in America. The Universal Open, right? Jeez. How many of those teams are still together to this day? And I mean those duos in particular, right? How many? The fucking none. There were none of them. Mognus and Mets and Aris were the complexity side that came third, and that did so well. Greasy and Scrub Killa were part of that girls side, which of course is no longer a thing. Greasy Meister was retired straight up. Like, what's the basis here for the 2v2 seeding? Mm-hmm. Oh, what? They had that one show match against France where they did pretty well. The one that was worth $100, yeah? Great. Significant results, guys.
Well, it's just such a small bubble that you can't have it. That's just a show match. Show matches should never be taken on into seeding unless there is a relevant scene around them to be able to pull that off. If we did like, you know, a full-on put countries together, which funnily enough the players like were together in 2v2, say let's take Canyons with Zamway and Stake, and they were the 2v2 team for Spain going up against the 2v2 team for the Middle East. I'm just going to say Saudi Arabia, am I correct? Yep. And then you're going up against 2v2 team of Vitality, which happens to be France. If you were able to stack them out in that and it came along to teams, then yes, that would be applicable. But that has not happened, has it?
No, it hasn't, and that's the problem. Okay, like, you know, like it's fucking so out of whack, this whole thing. Everyone's trying to justify it by saying they're the best 1v1 and 2v2 players in the world. It's like, what basis do you have to work that with? The fucking ranks? No. I don't buy it for a second that Oakley is the best 1v1 player in the world. He's no longer undefeated in his 1v1s, by the way. Joreuz just took that title the other day again. He beat them in a fucking show match in February.
He's not one on the leaderboard as of last night when I checked, Jay. So, yeah, exactly. You know, like even your own fucking arguments are completely invalid in this conversation. And I'm just looking at this like, go on. I was going to say, even then, it's not just Sandrock we're blasting this at. Like, I know for that aspect, but just seeding as a whole, when you look at teams like, let's just point out Source, currently 11th seed, a lot Tigree and Mognus, with OSM as their fourth, purely brought on in for those ones, by the way. Like, there is no doubt about that, because the other three would just get trounced by any other player in this tournament in ones. I don't understand the seeding across the board when you've got RL or RS, you know, past gone season, Celestial and Servette Geneva, 23rd, 24th seed, getting beaten on out by the likes of, let's just say, Stormtroopers. Don't get me wrong, happy for Polar, apparently Jack and Dead Monster, but what is this basis all on? It makes no sense at all, does it?
No, it doesn't, you know, like, I just looking at this fucking shit, like, come on, you know, like, I can understand where you want to come from in terms of arguing for the 1v1 and 2v2 side of things, but, like, I just don't get how this gives Sandrock even that much of an advantage. I understand putting them pretty high if you're going to use 1v1 and 2v2. And again, I respect that prospect. But 10th seed is the highest I could ever see Sandrock Gaming going. Even then, I'd put Singularity probably in fourth or third position. Maybe move Mousesports up to the third place area. The idea that 1v1 and 2v2 has so much parity in this case, right? When there are so little results to go off of, right? And everyone seems to be saying, well, the only result we have to work with Sandrock is TEI. Okay, that doesn't fucking mean anything. Quality control, the only result that they've got is fucking Superstar League. Does that count? No, it doesn't. It fucking doesn't. Those teams, you put them down low because of the fact they have not got any significant results. And don't tell me TEI was fantastic and amazing and it's such a bastion of prestige and an incredible sort of level of play in the Rocket League space, mates.
The teams came out and said
weren't trying.
They didn't care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, and people are going to take this clip and they're going to be like, "Oh, look, no, you fucking too salty," and it's like, no. This is a legit thing. Like we said, players have already said they don't care about TEI, a tournament that has less prize pool than last place in the Rocket League scene in the RLCS fucking tournament has no parity whatsoever. I'm sorry, go fuck off.
On the flip note, though, I'm one, quite surprised, and two, very happy that even the top teams are signing up for this. Like, I know it's money on the line. There's nothing on the line, nothing going around at the moment. But this, for me, I was actually surprised that a lot of these top teams would actually take time out of their like scrimming schedules to go along for this tournament. Considering it, yes, it is 25k, but the way you earn that 25k is a very roundabout way, and you're not really getting that. I think we looked in the best case scenario is about 7k for some of these teams, which most of the time 7k and even, well, that would probably end up about half a month's salary for some of the bigger players going on here. So you know, we're happy that they're still wanting to compete in this. Another problem, though, Jay, for me, is when you look at, say, Veloce and Barcelona, 13th, 14th seed, because they're playing with subs, or a stand-in for Barca, Veloce bringing on in Archie. Yet they're behind, you know, Tree of a Kind, Source, Canyons, all of that. I look at Veloce and go, if anything, that could be quite a sideways upgrade. I think they should stay within the top 10 quite easily. But the fact that it's pushed them so far back, I can understand Barca a little bit because Seeb doesn't have much of a class about himself because he hasn't played in top end. But
I mean,
still,
let's put it this way.
Consistency.
Right? This Veloce lineup is better than Oxygen Esports, okay? Like, come on.
Yeah,
you know?
Easily.
Like, you know, and these inconsistencies across the board seem to scream a fucking conflict of interest, right? You know, this is the reason why I talk about this, because the fact we're even asking this question is the problem here. Okay, it's not the fact that it was enacted. It's not the fact that I have irrefutable proof that it was enacted. It's the fact that we're questioning whether or not it was enacted in the first place. It was the same problem with TEI when Sandrock magically came second place, all in all, right? The fact that I have to ask, is something going on here, is the problem with this tournament, okay? And based off of this, based off the fact I haven't seen a good explanation or good metrics or good results or good anything as to why this seeding is the way that it is, I have every reason to believe this is corrupt as fuck. But every single reason in the fucking world, because I've seen this before. I've seen this before in Counter-Strike, and I'm not going to fucking stand by and say everything's all hunky-dory. This is absolutely fair. They've got their own basis for seedings because that's the way the tournament works. If we're going to talk about fucking rigging it in favor of certain teams, think about the argument that everyone's making. Sandrock are the best 1v1 and 2v2 team in the world. Okay, if that's the basis of your whole thing, then doesn't that mean the format is therefore rigged in this qualifier, yeah? Because let's think about this. First match is 1v1, second match is 2v2, third match is 3v3, fourth match is player's choice. So therefore, by your own logic, because Sandrock are the best 1v1 and 2v2 player in duo in the world, that means that they should win those first two games, just fucking tank the 3v3, then just select 1v1 and 2v2 for game 4 and win every match by that perspective, right? And based on the bracket that they have as a result of this seeding, I wouldn't be surprised. Dignitas and Reno Vitality have harder brackets than these guys do. Come on. Come on.
It is all very questionable. But Jay, on the counterpoint, how can this be so, you know, Middle East focus and bias when the other two Middle Eastern teams are there as the bottom two seeds?
Well, look, to their credit, they've given those guys fuck all because they've done fuck all, okay? Like you said, I've never heard of these two teams, okay? Right? There's no excuse for that. And to be honest, given the chance, I think they would have probably tried to put Sandrock at the top end of the space because, well, at that point, you might as well just fucking throw away the 3v3s because Sandrock got second place in TEI. That must work, right? There you go. Best 1v1 and 2v2 and second best 3v3 team in the world. I'm surprised they didn't go for that fucking argument. I think if they did, people would have called out on their bullshit, which is the reason why they're getting away with it right now. And poor people who have dared say, look, oh, maybe this might be a bit of a bad thing. Like John, aka Always, a Reddit mod, his fucking karma has been wrecked because he fucking called it out. He went on Reddit and he was like, look, no. Why is Sandrock third? Why is Source 11th? Why is Veloce and FCB down in 13th and 14th? You know, same logic to Triple Trouble and Celestial, who are in 22nd and 23rd.
Well, straight up, Singularity, the team that beat Sandrock in the finals of TEI, are seeded below them. How does that add up? Oh, the 1v1s of OK. Scrub Killa's there. You know, like, it makes no sense at all, does it?
The logic is completely flawed. And of course, all the Johnny Boy fans have had it around him because he was like, you do realize this is crew battles and not 3v3. Okay, then, John, how about this? You release the seeding sheet. Show the whole world. Show the whole world exactly how you put these seeds up together or how your team put these whole seeds up together because this screams of arse poor. And I refuse to acknowledge the Fusion tournament until you do so, until we see exactly how this is completely fair and impartial and has complete parity across the whole space. Once you do that, I will concede my point. I will do it. I'm fucking serious, mate. I will do it. And so will most of the other people in the scene, right? Because let's be real here, John. That is the reality of the situation, okay? You have not shown any results to anything whatsoever. When we think about play-ins and other tournaments that we all, go for when it comes to open qualifiers and other such things like that, usually when it comes to a big bracket, the seeds are released, right? Think about every other tournament under the sun. You usually get some sort of metadata or justifying information, and we all complain about the seeds because usually they're seeded very wrong, blah, 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 blah. But the point is that that's there, and you can at least use that as a basis of the argument here. There's no logic behind these fucking seedings, right? You seem to have just picked out whatever you think is the best team in the world. And prove me wrong, please. Prove me wrong. Please prove me wrong. I beg you to prove me wrong at this stage, because I would absolutely love to be proven wrong in this case, because I want more tournaments and I want to be proven wrong, because I really want this fucking thing to succeed. But as it stands right now, I'm not going to cover this. I'm not going to cover this because it screams of arsepool and it screams of corruption. And until you prove me wrong, sorry, not getting on my show. I will fucking run a bot league tournament on RLAfterShock to fill content for the next 2 weeks, right? Do you fucking think I'm joking? I'm not. That would provide a much more competitively integral tournament than this shit fucking does. End of conversation?
Yep.
Okay.
End of conversation.
Well, let me send you back
there
into the fucking main show. I believe the next thing we're talking about is the letter of grievances. I don't fucking know where I'm going to put this in the show. Bottom line, this is bullshit, as seems to be the rest of the Rocket League scene. Happy fucking Easter. The shouting only gets louder as there have been other shouts going on to other shouts going on in the rest of the esports industry. Of course, the report that came out from the Esports Observer by a man called Kevin Hitt, a true journalist, a guy that I've been interacting with in previous times. He was going to run a story about a particular CSGO organization who I was involved with, who were absolute scumbags. Didn't end up running it for whatever reason, but it is what it is. But he makes this report that the Esports Observer had obtained a letter sent to Psyonix on behalf of 13 Rocket League Championship Series teams, seeking to address a list of grievances regarding the handling and administration practices surrounding the RLCS. Now, you can go ahead and read the content of that letter, because I think that, honestly, if you want to know exactly the state what we're in, like that article pretty much sums it up. Because this has not surprised me for the longest time ever. And when this came out, I was like, yep, that's it, Of course it's going to fucking happen. That's just the way that things go in the Rocket League esports space.
Yeah, and I love this. This was quite an interesting one, because I remember seeing this as well posted towards the esports Reddit, like the subreddit there, and a lot of people just looking at this. Some people just going, so the orgs want more control. Others going, yeah, this is pretty much reasonable because it's how other orgs run. A lot of people looking at this and saying, the orgs wanting more control, is that them trying to ask for a franchise league? Not necessarily, because, of course, what they're revealing in this article, for example, is very vague and around, but just the main points of it. It's just basically the orgs come together and go, Psyonix, you've got to tell us what you're doing. We know from other sources that the orgs right now, with no clear idea what is coming up in the next few weeks, are very antsy. And they in a world where we are right now, you got to think with COVID, probably going to be a financial crisis afterwards. They've got to make sure that their money is going to good use. Everything in Rocket League right now is being done at a loss. So quite rightly, all the orgs teaming up are looking at trying to get something from Psyonix, especially after the Epic acquisition last summer, and going, what are you guys doing? We believe in your product. We believe in Rocket League. But right now, we don't believe in you.
That's the thing, right? Let that echo. Doesn't that not echo the community sentiments here? Does it not echo our own sentiments here on this show? We've constantly said, look, we believe in Rocket League, but the one organization, the one entity that needs to step it up and fucking, do something about it is the entity that's now being held account by the organizations that's supporting them in the first place. And they're right to do so, because the thing about this article is that it highlights something that we've been hinting at for a while now, is that not even the organizations at the top end of the scene know where we're going in the Rocket League esports space. No insider into the scene knows anything about what's going on. We've talked about screenshots that we've received from the internal professional Discord about, organizations who have wanted to get out, and organizations who have been setting on the idea of getting out. All sorts of different bits and pieces like that. We've had intimations for the longest time, and now this is it being officially fucking put out there. I don't doubt that Kevin Hitt's article is any sort of it has any sort of like inaccuracies to it. I think he's a reputable journalist, all things considered. And for me, it seems very believable based off the stuff that I've heard behind the scenes. Because again, organizations have wanted out for the longest time. We've seen in the last year several orgs leave the scene. Like, think about who we used to have in the scene: Fnatic, Complexity, just two of the main examples. Envy just rejoined after a massive hiatus, and even then I don't even know if they're going to stick around because they're not getting their franchising, which they want so bad. You know, like all this stuff is are factors to consider when you think about, hey, has this not been coming up for a long time? And it absolutely has. This doesn't surprise me whatsoever here, Bacon. It really doesn't.
No, and my best point to make is a response by Veloce Cam. He's the talent manager over at Veloce, so he'll be the one looking after the team. And just straight from his tweet, I want to say a lot more about this, especially after reading the comments, but my better judgment says that would be a bad idea. So I'll just say this: every brand involved, every org he means, wants to help make this esport reach its potential, but the severity of this cannot be neglected. That's a dude that knows to near enough try and keep this behind doors, and that's why this letter was never made public before. You know, it's probably right now, from my knowledge, this letter was sent a fair bit ago, and it's only sort of like being prodded towards, you know, a report outlet like a Esports Observer, where it's just that sort of trying to bring it to the masses, try and push it a little bit further within a certain set agreement of what Esports Observer could say on that article and keep it well under wraps, because this is something which Psyonix is not responding to them about. It's been known for ages that it could take months for them to respond to orgs, to, you know, interested parties, and that is not good enough at all. That's not even like respectful in a lot of sense, where they're just completely blanked for that period of time. And so for this right now, where the orgs want to stay in, because like we said, that they value what Rocket League could be, and everyone can see that it has the potential to be the biggest esport in the world, but at the moment it's not going to be able to reach that. It's just going to near enough stagnate what it currently is, and there's constant everyone.
Yeah, and there's constant interest from, you know, entities looking outside into, you know, what's going on in the scene. And, you know, the people that are interested, like, you know, just the other day I was actually speaking to one of my point of contacts for a certain tournament organizer who I won't name for various reasons, basically asking, hey, can I have a point of contact for Rocket League? So we're interested in running a Rocket League tournament, and you are, you know, a pretty big caster there. Well, I'm not that big, but, you know, to their perspective, it seems like I was big, but they asked me, hey, you know, just leveraging our contacts here, can you send us somebody? I'm like, yeah, well, here's your guy, but good fucking luck getting any sort of contact out of him was basically the way I had to respond, because they were asking how easy is it to get something set up in Rocket League. I'm like, it's not fucking easy at all. You know, like from a community perspective, we have struggled for the longest time ever because of the fact that Psyonix takes so long to communicate shit. You know, all the stuff that they promised in terms of the progression of the scene has fucking gone by, and it is not really it is not really allowed for any sort of big growth in that respect. And it's like, you know, when I got other entities that want to get involved in doing stuff in the space, like they've basically got no way in, because it's so impossible to get stuff out of Psyonix. It's so impossible to run third-party tournaments because of their heavy restrictions on the schedule, their heavy sort of emphasis on, you know, first-party tournaments only and third-party tournaments are only for communities and shit. And, you know, obviously with COVID-19, it's not really helping on the situation, but like we said, this is the perfect chance to allow some other people to take the reins and for the scene to grow in the space where all eyes will be on us. You know, like, again, like, as I mentioned in the past previous shows, we've been on ESPN, we've been on the BBC, we've been on so much big syndication platforms that before esports never had access to. And that's all down to the belief in the game and how easy Rocket League can be to understand for the casual audience. And even so, despite that, when it comes to people coming in to invest, it's impossible to make it happen.
So I find it quite funny as well. So let's talk about that ESPN broadcast, purely because that was the NA Spring series. And what was put out on that, Jay, we know from, and I mean, one between us, and then I've spoke to two other production companies where they've looked at that broadcast alone and gone, shit, this is what they're putting out on ESPN. We can make a much better product. And now they're trying to hunt for something, because this is what Psyonix are promoting to the big times. And other production companies around Europe are suddenly going, oh shit, we can get into this. This is the level it's at. We can make a much better product and actually take this to sponsors. But again, that's them seeing it just from a complete blank state, not knowing the Rocket League scene. So I'm hoping best of luck to those guys if they can somehow break on through. But that just shows that without the knowledge of Rocket League, all these orgs now looking into it are suddenly, and all these production companies looking into it are suddenly going, shit, let's jump on this. So right now should be a massive period of growth coming up for Rocket League. But do we think that's going to happen? No.
And again, this article, this letter does not inspire a lot of hope to that. And I mean, you know, there's been a lot of conversation surrounding this. Most of it has been towards the growth of the scene. Another one of those conversations that have been thrown about, especially if you were there on the Reddit thread, was the idea of franchising. Now, I mean, we've already explained our perspective here, and you know, we've already talked and debated about this in the past because obviously, you know, we'd like to talk about Rocket League esports, and this has been one of those hot button talking topics that have been there for basically the entire fucking, for the entire scene. And, you know, obviously that's the first thing that crops up whenever they talk about org ownership of the spots in RLCS, which is something that was hinted to in the letter, and people keep saying, hey, you know, the orgs want to get franchising going, and it's like, no, they don't. Let's clarify that part first. Like, you know, and as well as that, I want to lead into a conversation that we had the other day in respect to one of the mailbag questions we got about the 2/3 rule. And also I want to just loop that back into this because the point that they're asking for in this letter is to have organizations own the spots in RLCS and RLRS, thereby abolishing the 2/3 rule in which 2/3 of a roster need to stay together in order to retain their spot into next season and have that transfer ownership to the organization owning the spot, which of course does mean that there's no roster restrictions. That org can fill whatever team that they want, and they'll still be subject to the promotion relegation system that we currently have in place now. Whilst I do not feel like this is the right move to make, I can completely respect the organization's side of things here, because, like, let's be real, what do they have? You know, like when it comes to roster moves, it's very impossible to do anything like that. You know, because obviously the fact you can only make one roster move per off season at best. You know, unless you want to just completely scrap the whole thing and try again to get through rival series and then through championship, which could be a decent idea if you have the money to expend on, you know, like, you know, severance costs and, you know, more contract negotiations and such, which has just become such an expensive endeavor, especially for Rocket League. And, you know, considering the money output that a lot of these organizations are giving, like, you know, one of the numbers that was quoted in the article was $40,000 for a team's salary. It's like, you know, that's not a far gone conclusion, guys. Like, we've heard of numbers that reach those sort of like numbers in the past. You know, like it was just the other day.
I know two teams that have that amount quite easily.
Yeah. Yeah, easily. And, you know, and then you've got to think about buyout costs as well, because, you know, that's another factor you've got to consider. Like the other day, we were, a few months ago, we reported that one of the buyout costs for one of the North American teams was in the range of six-figure numbers. And that's absolutely the case in a lot of cases. I wouldn't be surprised if certain players have even more. Like, you know, we're probably talking about, what, 500K-ish maybe for Turbo Pulsar. I don't have any insights on that, but just based on the numbers that I've been hearing, that's a good estimate and a decently accurate estimate for his contract buyout for NRG, you know, and considering it's NRG, that might even go even higher than that. So when you're talking about the amount of money being thrown about here, I sympathize with the position, even if I don't agree with it per se. You know, I think that, you know, when it comes to, you know, stuff like organizations owning the roster, then what happens about teams that don't own or aren't part of an organization? What happens then? How does that hard work get put into it? How can we stop stuff like, you know, one particular player just, gaming the system and managing to get his teammates kicked off in replacement of a new project to try and stay in the RLCS? So, you know, like, how do we stop those issues coming into play when it comes to organization ownership is the next step to the argument. But, you know, again, those are the reasons why I disagree with it. But again, I completely sympathize with how organizations see it from their perspective.
Yeah, and if anything, with the attitude of Rocket League players, especially with the age of it, Jay, I personally want the orgs to have more control over teams, not in a franchise league in any single way, but from what they're saying where they're in the spot. When you look, every single off-season, it seems like every team has to make a transfer, bar, like, let's say 8 of the 10 RLCS teams make a transfer. For the orgs, that is a costly affair, because like you said, buyout clauses, all of that. And the orgs aren't making that decision. The players are. To the point of it was even, we'll talk about this later, but with ClayX, right there for BDS. His teammates made that decision. The org just afterwards had to go, oh shit, this is happening. I guess he's off the team now. The orgs don't have any control of that, and that is a massive no-no, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, that is, I think, but you could spin that as a point to the favor of the organization in that respect, because at that point they have a little bit more power over the organization's roster, which I think absolutely should be the case. But I think you can there's better ways to do that than just do organization ownership or spot ownership for the org.
Well, you just keep say not 2/3. Like let's include the bench as well, the subs, because we've seen in recent history that subs with Archie on Mouse is actually a very important factor to have. You say 2 out of the 4 have to remain, including the sub player, and that's implemented alongside the orgs having the ownership of the spot. I feel like that is fairly reasonable.
If you want, by the way, a bit more detail onto the franchising thing, then if you go to the thread in the Rocket League Esports subreddit, and if you scroll down a little bit, I have a response to Armed Bubble about his a question about, why everyone makes out that franchising is bad, which was the smarter of the debates that I've had this week, because he actually accepted his position and actually, had an open enough mind to be enlightened by his perspective. And I think he's going to move forward in a much better perspective in that respect. But if you want to go ahead and find that, it's going to be, somewhere in the response to the Reddit thread. I do want to focus in on the top comment, though, as of the moment here, because it is actually from CloudFuel. Obviously, we all know who CloudFuel is, Twitch Esports, former manager of the RLCS. And his response here was surprisingly optimistic about this whole thing. Obviously, everyone's been sort of like singing the fucking the end is nigh, ringing the bells sort of thing about, Rocket League Esports. But he was actually talking about how this type of letter was sent before in 2019 when Josh Watson was the head of esports. He's actually stepped away from the esports team entirely, which was a headline that kind of slipped underneath our radar. I had no fucking idea that was the case, which probably limits us down back to like maybe 3 people in the esports team, which is fucking concerning now. But apparently, according to him, with the conversations that he's had, it sounds like things are improving with Psyonix. And while I do see that obviously, Veloce had the Cam had his sort of thing, Veloce, he had Boyan weighing in on his particular thoughts, and they weren't as optimistic as this. I wanted to know, Bacon, have you got any insights into this whole fucking on what CloudFuel's talking about here, or is this just what's the damage here? What's the situation?
The optimism, I think, is alongside the lines of them handing over control of productions, at any rate, to teams like DreamHack running the whole Spring series. Like they had full control over it. Yes, it was overseen by Psyonix, but you got to think all tournament administration was done by DreamHack employees, all broadcast sort of line up there.
Considering the criticisms we had with DreamHack about the production and the adminning from last time, that's not exactly a good fucking point to make.
But my point just being that I think that is the idea being that that's opening the door to possibilities down the line. DreamHack, their online productions aren't great, as we've seen. But possibly down the line, you could see ESL, the sister company, take it on over, which could be a massive benefit. We'll see what goes on with RLCS next season, because, of course, Science was heavily involved in there. Who knows? Maybe NG takes a much heavier control. Who knows? But I think that's where it's coming more down, where they've accepted the size of their esports team is small. They're going to leave it small, but hand over the reins to other companies, as that could be an option for them.
Well, on that note, then, obviously, we've been talking a lot about, on and off, we've been talking a lot about Epic and their sort of, their involvement in Rocket League Esports since they acquired Psyonix a little over a year ago now, and we've yet to see the actual effects of that. And it's like, for me, when I first looked at this, I thought to myself, actually, maybe this is the idea of they're transitioning over to working with the Epic Esports team and having access to their infinite amounts of money. Obviously, we've seen Scheist and his Twitter account got switched from esports at Psyonix to esports at Epic Games, which has hinted at the idea that we're slowly moving into Epic taking control of the esports space, which for me would be the best outcome in this particular respect, just to have all that money to swing about and just fucking fund all sorts of big tournaments and get other organizers in to help promote a circuit that actually means something rather than just the RLCS and that being it. And obviously, with the COVID situation, like, I can respect obviously how certain things would be on hold, which is what CloudFuel mentions here. But, I'm not sure. I haven't had any other insights other than what Cloud has said. So I couldn't tell you for certain if that's actually accurate, whether or not there's anything going on. It seems like very optimistic sort of stance here. In a thread like this and with a story like this where there's not a lot of optimism, I'm just not sure what to make of it, because to me, like, I haven't got any further insights other than this public statement, and not even Psyonix have come out and addressed this once again, which, great communication, by the way, guys. It's not as if, you promised that you'd be more communicative in that in that open letter or anything, but, just a food for thought. Anyway.
Do you want to get some closing as well there? Actually, I just quickly did a little dig around Twitter, and it's only the esports team that have put Psyonix/Epic Games on their handles. Just from a quick dig around, like the art team is still just down on the Psyonix. So that's just an interesting little one. So maybe there has been a full engulfing from Epic into just the esports aspect.
Well, again, like the whole point from that press release when Psyonix were acquired by Epic was, to boost the esports operations. So that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. But I just want to get some closing thoughts on this topic before we move on to our next piece of news, because obviously there is a bit of a land shaker here, more so than anything else on the card this week. So, we just got to talk about this, and I just want to. Do we think that the future looks bleak now for Rocket League esports?
I'm on the line. We still stick, because we knew this sort of thing was going on, Jay. It is still very much down the middle, very much. It's make or break. It could either be a massive boon with Psyonix, and not Psyonix as such, but Epic finally taking the reins, letting this just near enough go full explosion, and it could just become massive, especially with the amount of love that a lot of the orgs have for Rocket League. Or if they don't change up, if they keep running how they have for so long, then it could just be the break point. And I'm hoping that after everything that has come on out, that with it finally going public as well, they finally feel like they have to turn this full circle and do it quick. Otherwise, it's bad PR for them,
Yeah, I mean, for me, the way that I look at this is that I have to quote my boy Blonde Monkey, or not a blonde monkey, depending on how you want to say it, because I think he kind of summarized this pretty well in our Discord, which, of course, you should absolutely join by going to the show notes and video description every 10 episode of the podcast. He said it's do or die time now, and I think that's absolutely the case. Like, they got to start listening to these organizations, because whilst a lot of people want to think, oh, we don't need, the orgs to help out the space, I think that's what certainly the idea and the perspective that Psyonix have had in the past. Obviously, interviews and other sorts of materials apply. But the thing that I think that the thing that people tend to miss is the fact that organizations pay all the salary for the players, and again, as you mentioned, that's $40,000 a month in some cases. Like that's a stupid amount of money. Even for a team of 3 players plus a coach, that's still like fucking $10,000 a piece. At the worst end per month. That's a lot of cash. That is a lot of fucking cash to be shitting on esport like this, and when they don't have a basic idea of the direction of the game and how they can maximize their investment, then we're up shit's creek, basically.
Well, this is why everyone said inflated salaries for so long. What the size of this esport is, that money should not be knocking about, but you've got to keep competing at the top of the level. Your peers are making that money. You come in and you see that's what it is. You've got to match it. It's just the way of the world.
And one of the things as well to make a mention, obviously, is the fact that, like with that level of money kicking around, you have to get, it's a big investment to make. So whenever any organization picks up a team and pays them that much money, like they are hoping that this thing goes big. And it can go big. And we all know it can go big. While there have been a lot of people that have been saying nothing can stop Psyonix from, stop Rocket League from going big, honestly, I have to say that there is one thing that can stop Rocket League from going big, and that's fucking Psyonix. At the end of the day, this has been provable throughout the course of time, and absolutely that is the case here. So It's do or die from my perspective, and I absolutely believe that to be the case. But that is the org letter of grievances to the hands of Psyonix. Move on to our final piece of general news before we move on to the big fucking silly season roster shuffles. Because Snaski, previous RLCS player and a coach as well, has announced his retirement from the Rocket League scene, or at least from Rocket, not from esports, but from the Rocket League scene in general. Because he has a passion for esports, and so he wants to continue working in the industry somehow. I don't know what he'll move on to, but this very short tweet longer basically just says, look, I've been stepping away for a while, and the passion I had for the game has disappeared. And the timing on this as well is just about as appropriate with the letter coming in. I've noticed a lot of people have been saying similar sort of stuff, like Kash put out a tweet longer as well, saying, look, I'm putting all this fucking effort into this, into the Wikipedia page, and for what? It seems like... It seems like shit just getting really fucking horrible every single day. And I sympathize with that position, absolutely. But Snaski is the latest of the retirements to happen over the last few weeks. And it feels like every single week we're getting at least one significant retirement in the Rocket League space. And it kind of goes back to the same conversation we've been having for the past few weeks, is the fact that there's no basis for these players to continue to operate any lower than the RLCS. And it's like, with all these salaries kicking about, is it any wonder why that's the case? Come on.
The big one for me here is that Snaski has already stepped away from the game as a player. He moved to that coaching role. So for him to move away from coaching really is ringing alarm bells, don't get me wrong, fantastically they will stick into esports and hope the best for him and all of that. But again, with the whole, from the Psyonix aspect, there is not necessarily a future for coaches. Earlier on this week, we also had the announcement that Mount is officially the coach for Vitality. He's been the coach for a while, but that was him sort of moving up and filling the role from Gregan, where they didn't need a manager as such solely for the team, as someone else had been able to, pretty much easily do that on top. There's not much to manage with Rocket League, but it just feels like right now that for me is a harsh point, that you can't even cut it realistically as a coach in Rocket League when you're, a lad that was back on Fnatic and such, and a great player back in the day. This is harsh right now.
It is, and it is just one of those things where it's like, look, Snaski was, in the twilight of his career, I think, at the end of the day, when it comes to his involvement as an active player and as an active member of teams. I think that he had a lot to bring to the table as a coach, and I think that possibly his time with other projects, he certainly picked up the wrong teams, being part of TSM, come on, that's fucking hell if I ever saw it. But it is the end of another era, because Snaski was one of the OGs. Remember Supersonic Avengers? He competed in Gfinity Invitational, first season of RLCS, first season of RLRS. He's been part of all these teams. And I feel like the career that he's led is certainly one to be of note. I just wish it could have lasted a little bit longer and given him another chance to do some decency in the scene.
Oh, definitely. This is one of the lads where you'd think, being there since, an OG of Rocket League since season 1, and had been involved in every single season, bar season 4 in the RLCS, where Fnatic were down in the RLRS for the very first season, Jay. So it feels like you're losing out a big player in that scene. This is a guy that's known the game since the start, and for him to no longer have any passion to work within the game, for him to have no faith anymore, wanting to stay within esports but not quite sure where to go, that is just worrying. But I just hope to see that he does well, because he's a good lad. I've met him a few times.
Yeah, and we could be going on about this for ages. We could repeat the same talking points we've had in previous episodes, but we're not about to do that. So, just go ahead and look back at those last few episodes if you want to, know what we're talking about when it comes to retirements. But Snaski, at the end of the day, he's out, and it's unfortunate. Sad times all aboard. And that concludes it for our general news this week. A bit of a shit one, all things considered, but we'll move on, because there's been a lot of roster news this week, Bacon, and that certainly has been the main thing that's dominated a lot of the headlines and dominated a lot of the subreddit space, because the rumors have been flying and the roster moves have been running about, and, credit to Fusion, I hate the tournament, I hate the concept, and I hate the conflict of interest behind it. At the very least, it has given us a massive insight as to who's going where for the next season. So we'll be covering all that in a moment. moments' time. I did want to go through some of the more circumstantial ones and the reports on some players that have been unable to be confirmed. And we'll start in the Dignitas camp because Joreuz is, according to Shifts, potentially getting picked up by Dignitas here. The report itself did say that they were going to be playing with him on Fusion, but Dignitas decided they were going to play with Astral instead. But based on the idea of what Shift have been able to do and the news that we'll cover up in a minute in regards to Astral, this seems like a pretty likely move. And with Joreuz being touted for several different teams, along with his recent performances in other tournaments as well. I can see this being a very high possibility to me.
Yeah, so when we go forward talking about these sort of like roster rumors, it is all based on, it seems like Fusion was just not at a good point. It was too early for these teams to make these changes up because it is very, very heavily that Astral is going elsewhere, to the point where he might even be picked up, and we'll talk about it next. But it just seems like they're sticking with it. The team will notice, and I expect Dignitas probably to have a bit of a fairly shit performance in Fusion, purely because that team is on the way out. You know what it's like when players suddenly go, well, this is pointless for me right now. I've got nothing to prove. We're not improving together. It feels like it's not a pretty swan song for them, Jay.
No, not a very particularly pretty swan song, especially when you consider how unpretty it has been in the past. Obviously, we're talking in semi-decent detail as to last week when we're talking about the sort of like the conflict in that team between Astral and his squad mates. So, like, we were talking about whether or not it would be a short-term good move to pick up someone like you, to kick someone like eekso, or a long-term move to try and get Astral out for a new player back in. And Violent Powder certainly has proven that he's got some level of knowledge and insight into the bubble scene players. Obviously, we found Astral that way. Joreuz could be the next one up on the list. And it seems like from this perspective that they've actually made the decision to go with the long-term move rather than the short-term one here. And for Violent Panda, I can imagine his patience is getting stretched a little bit thin, but I do like the concept, to be honest. Especially with how close they came in the last couple of seasons to getting into the World Championship, especially in Madrid. Obviously, they won the European regionals, and then they bombed out of the Spring Series. I think honestly that Spring Series bombing was was the catalyst to sort of like push this move together. We talked about the idea of there being a roster shuffle based on Dignitas moving rosters, and it seems like that was the start of this whole thing. And we're going to go through so many more of them in a moment's time here. But I want to talk about whether or not Joreuz will be a good addition to the Dignitas side, because we doubted Astral when he first entered the scene and entered the roster. And I wanted to ask you if you think that it's going to be a similar sort of story for Joreuz when he goes to the Dignitas.
Yeah, it's basically you're changing like for like here. Astral's only been in the team since last summer, so that's crazy for me. But yeah, for me, Joreuz has a very similar playstyle. He's an incredibly mechanically skilled player. It just comes down to whether Joreuz can pick up the mental side of things on a good note. Like, he's already incredibly good with his decisions, but I'm talking about the team synergy aspect. We've seen him already get so far with the Clappers, which was incredible in the Spring Series, but that was one off. We know he did fairly well over in the Rocket Baguette Rising Stars, but here you're going right on up to the big leagues. This is going to be a real test for him, and I think if you're going to give it to any coach, Violent Panda is the best one to bring through that new talent.
He's
so
not a coach, though, mate. Come on.
Sorry. He sort of does that on the mental side of things.
He's
and
the captain, though.
Yes. You can see the frustration he was having to be the go-between for Yukio and Astral. And I just hope right now, if yours can get along with a team and just not be an arsehole, basically, this should be brilliant for them. The only problem is if he can get this going quick. We've already seen him do it, with the Clappers get to Spring Series. So that's massive right there. But we'll have to see going forward. Unfortunately, Fusion would have been the best time to get him on board, get like a very light bit of practice in a competitive scenario. But who knows? What's after Fusion? God knows. But
I mean, that org letter probably highlights that point more than anything else. But continue, please.
But that will be the big tester for him, because that's probably when he'll come on in. Unless I don't know what's going on with Fusion like right now. Couldn't they make team changes? Like, are you allowed to change out one player halfway through? Because Org stopping out for this feels very odd, I imagine. But we'll see what's going on.
We will see indeed what is going on, but for now we're going to move on from that and talk about the next roster move, or the next Rumours roster move, which is a good segue actually, because it does sort of tie into Astral to a certain extent. But sources say that Fruity has received a tryout on Mousesports ahead of Fusion. I believe that Mousesports did not go and did not go ahead and make that move in time for Fusion. They're sticking with Arju in that respect. But based on this, it seems like Fruity may be on the way out of the OXG side. And considering their performance on Oxygen, it's expected, and it's not exactly one of those ones that I take a look at and think, hey, Fruity's gonna, and say, hey, I'm too surprised, to be honest, because, like, at the end of the day, Pharaoh and Chaussette were the mechanical gods, and those were the guys that, probably hold the power in that respect, even though I do think that Fruity leaving is the worst move that you could have made.
Oh, Fruity's the worst member on that team to lose, really, because he's the backbone of that team, Jay. Like I said, we thought it should be fairer, but coming on in this move, let's talk about that. Like, Fruity going over to Mouse, I get it. I can understand that sort of placement there, but is it going to work? If Fruity is definitely out of Oxygen, he should basically have the pick of the litter for RLCS. He's that good a player, Any
really
team
though?
could... No, I'm just saying any team could benefit from having him, because you look at the others lingering on around. Let's take a look at Barca, where they've just dropped Flakes. Bringing in Fruity as a very solid core player when you've got Ronicky, who's already an aggressor, that would be a perfect fit for them. Don't know if Fruity wants to go over there, of course, but I'm just saying, like, so many teams could benefit from having this really well-rounded player, because we know Fruity can be an attacker as well as a defender. He can fit whatever role is needed of him.
See, like, the thing about when I talk about, like, whether or not he'd have the pick of the litter, I feel that his stock has kind of dropped because he's not always been the player at the forefront.
He's not going to go to Dig. He's not going to go to Vitality. Those
absolutely.
teams, like, no.
I think for a team like Mousesports certainly could be pretty respectable, considering how they already have their heads in the gutter, and they're pretty. That's not the right saying, actually. They already have their morale and their general sort of like perception of things, kind of like thrown off kilter with the Spring Series results. So seeing someone like Fruity step up to the plate and do something in that respect, I think that probably could be a decent move for them. Whether or not in replacing Archie, though, is the main is the main thing, because to me it feels like it's going to be, obviously, with again the conversations we're seeing with Speed leaking out his DMs on stream by accident. We know that they're not happy with Arju's performance. So it's like, is Fruity for Arju a good move all in all for Mousesports?
So this is a weird one, because I feel like Arju enables Speed and Cooks to play their best, So maybe he's not playing at his best, but the team's playing at the best, right? And yes, the Spring Series, they didn't get the results they want. Yes, Dig did show up for day 2, and of course they're going to be upset where they finished Mouse. But I look at this team and I just go, I feel like this is a project that could work. The problem is that I'm also a massive realist and say I probably don't see any team other than Dig being able to beat out Vitality in Europe, That's just the harshness of it. A team can definitely do that. I mean, we saw blooming Singularity take down Vitality back in league play, So anyone can do it, but it's just that realistic. Who can you get another team to the top of Europe? And Mouse right now, I look at that with Arju and go, you're making these two players the best they can be. But Fruity, is he the right call? Yes, it's a sideways move from Arju, because you're not going to see Fruity, like, near enough be a massive powerhouse for this team. But could he enable his two teammates? It was always Fruity being the one to support, not really... I'm trying to think how to describe. Fruity, when you look at Oxygen, the previous Reciprocity roster, he always worked in tandem to Chaussette. Chaussette up in attack, Fruity's in defense. Chaussette can't really perform that day. He moves back more into midfield. Farah goes into the defense. And Fruity sort of formed a more attacking role alongside Chaucer, as well as being able to hold up that midfield. So when you come into the role in Mouse, what does he do? Because you've got Speed, who at the moment is looking fantastic in the attack. You can't deny it all, and he's also great at getting back into defense. So Fruity's playstyle, where he's trying to support Speed and working off him, if Speed gets a day where he's just not feeling it in the attack, would he be able to pick that up? Is questionable. But I don't think that's what they need right now. They need an enabler. They need Archie right there. Fruity's a great player, but I don't see the benefit coming down to making this team the best they could be. It feels too safe.
From my angle, the way that I could see this is that Fruity will be brought in as sort of like the new captain of the Mousesports side, as like like a big sort of pace breaker and a pace setter. Because obviously, when you take a look at his roles on the Oxygen esports lineup, he's obviously the sort of like the de facto captain outside of potentially Ferrer at that stage. I know that in Reciprocity he certainly was listed as a captain for a little bit of time. So to have him step up to the fold and captain out the Mousesports side, it could be an opportunity for him to potentially step back, play a bit more of a supportive role, and try and utilize Speed and Cooks here as their and try and place them in a bit more of a better style in accordance to where the roster should be at. Fruity is the kind of player that would do that. He is the kind of player that would take a step back and try and play a bit more of an overarching role rather than like a star player sort of thing.
So I would have never considered that thought of Cooks in moving more out of defense and being let loose more aggressively, right? That's just something right now over the God knows how long you don't expect from Cooks here. He's always been that defender which can just amazingly get into attack in the one-offs, and he makes those count, So possibly that could be it. That could be the unlocking feature where you just got to give Cooks more freedom, more room to work with, and Fruity could definitely provide that, but it just depends on if that's the playstyle they go as a team.
Well, regardless of what the playstyle they go for is, the report that was set out by Shift has been backed up by a secondary report by ESPN. This one, actually, I don't believe... was credited by Arda Okal, who made a very, very quick sort of summary on this one on ESPN.com. Basically saying that they learned that RLCS Championship Series EU MVP Astral is set to leave Dignitas and get signed by Oxygen Esports. So this kind of backs it up even further than that. The fact that all the reports seem to hint, obviously, we know that Astral was touted to be on the way out in favor of Joreuz, as we just explained a moment ago, and now he's also been touted to go out and join the Oxygen Esports side, as Fruity has also been given tryouts with the Mousesports squad. Now, while Oxygen did announce their roster for Fusion and have, of course, Fruity involved in that one, there was a bit of a bait and switch put out a little bit after the fact, obviously, with Jesse being put as a main man in the roster. Whether or not they'll actually end up playing into Oxygen's sort of fader, whether or not they'll actually end up fielding Jesse, or whether they'll be fielding Fruity at all, whether he's at the stand-in is a new question entirely. But again, much like how Dignitas didn't list their new roster on Fusion, I still think that the possibility is there when it comes to Fruity out into Mousesports and Astral into Oxygen.
Oh, definitely. Like, Astral going over to Oxygen actually makes a bit of sense to me. It would be completely shaking up how the team works, but if Chaucer's really not comfortable in the attack like he used to, bringing in a player to be able to fill that Chaucer running up, keeping a hold of the midfield, being able to work a bit of the defense, Farah focusing mainly on defense, but also being a nuisance in midfield. I think that team could work, and it's a new direction. It'll be an interesting one to see. And I think Astral will probably like that since he's the main focus of the team,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I 100% agree with that aspect. But, regardless of whether or not they're good moves or bad moves, those are the current rumors going on. We'll update you as things go on here on RLAfterShock and RLAfterShock.com. For now, though, we're going to move on and talk about some of the confirmed rosters that we currently have for Fusion. Again, Fusion did basically provide a massive insight as to who's going where. And we have some interesting ones to talk about here. So we'll just sort of start going broad strokes on this one, and we'll try our best to sort of summarize it as succinctly as we can, because already we've gone quite a bit of time in this show without even getting into the mailbag section. So, and we've still got about like 8 rumors to cover, eight moves to cover in total. So we'll start in the FC Barcelona camp. Obviously, they bombed the fuck out of the spring series, and we were all saying they need to make a move. We didn't know which move to make. In the end, they decided to cut Flakes from their roster. This is also partially down to Flakes also deciding to say, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and make my own roster. We should talk about that in a second. Ronicky, however, took to the stage and he mentioned, or he talked about the new FC Barcelona roster for the Fusion tournament. It will be him, Devo, and Seeb standing in for the team for this particular tournament. Now, again, we'll get onto Flakes in a moment here. I want to talk about Seeb. How is he going to fit into this lineup?
I don't know. So Seeb, I haven't been able to see him because he's been playing, sub for a while now, and I'm tuning into, I can't remember the last time I saw a stream from him or, him taking part in the tournament. So I've got no clue. The thing is right now, this is just a stand-in for the period of time it is, And Seeb's got no expectations. I don't think Barca's got any blooming expectations apart from people that are hardcore Barca fanboys or just the name of Barcelona itself. Because right now, when you look at the competition, you probably shouldn't have any expectations of Barca. They'll be on par with their standing, probably with the mid RLRS teams, I reckon, Jay. Maybe top end of that if you're lucky. Because Barca right now are playing with not a 2-man squad as such, but they wouldn't have scrimmed with Seeb at all. So you just got to be very realistic at those with your expectations and just go, Barca are playing, they'll do okay, but don't expect them to win,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's considering who Flakes is and considering what Seeb's been able to do, it's a big downgrade. As you mentioned, he's been a sub for many different teams, Treble AS Monaco. The only team that I really can think of that he's been a significant part of was Crazy Crew, and obviously they haven't done much in the grand scale of things. So, for them, I'm not sure what they're hoping to get out of this roster. I do think I have to agree with you.
Hope he can do an Archie, though. That's all we can say. If he's the next Archie and gets picked up to the main squad, that'd be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be the best timeline for everybody involved for me. But I can't take stock in that being the realistic sort of expectation. So the best we can do is sort of just mention it and just see how well he'll do, because again, expectations are off the table for everyone here. I did want to go to the flip side of this though and talk about Flakes, because obviously with him going out of the roster, he mentioned that he's going to be creating his own team of new players who will play the same style as him, same play style as him, because it's too frustrating to play an RLCS with a team with different ideas of the game. And in particular, there's a stream highlight, I lost it, but basically he just said, look, they don't want to do what I want to do. So I'm going to find players who want to do what I want to do. And then we're going to try and go see if we can re-qualify for RLRS. Now, firstly, I'm happy that he's looking to go ahead and re-qualify for RLRS, because I think that honestly, for most players that would have dropped out the tier 1 scene, most players like in Flakes' position would have just gone to streaming and said fuck it, and that's a respectable sort of position to take, even though I don't agree with it, but it is what it is. But his perspective seems to be, look at me, I'm the best thing in the world, I fucking know what I'm doing, I'm going to create a team that does my ideals, and it just screams of ego. It's so bad, man.
I still find it so amazing, where he got this ego from, because he got picked up by Complexity of sheer, I'm going to say sheer luck, on the day of DreamHack qualifiers about a year ago, Since then, amazing what they did with him. Was able to re-qualify up into the RLCS, and then he starts shitting on his teammate. They drop completely off the face of Earth. Okay. He's still a good player. Everyone knows that. Gets put into Barca. All's going well. Start shitting on teammates or whatever, apparently. And yeah, he's off of that. I just feel right now that, dude, perhaps it's you. We've said the same for Bluey. Come on. we're not just, focused on him. We said the same thing for Bluey, and it just comes down to that of, buddy, best of luck to you. If you can make this and change up the whole landscape of Rocket League, fucking amazing. Do I think that's going to happen?
No. Absolutely not.
I reckon he's just now going to be in a whole loop of throwing in new teammates, because every couple of weeks his new teammates are going to look at and just go, can you stop effing and blinding at me? Can you stop calling me a dumb donkey? No, I'm not having this when we're not even qualified for the RL or RS or RLCS. If he got into a spot of one of those two teams, then some players would put up with him naturally, because that's the spot they've already got, and they're being pulled into those teams. But right now, I mean, Lorty, who I like Lorty. He hasn't been on a major team for a while, so that's going to be interesting. Aquanix, a new up-and-coming player, which will be interesting to see. Apparently, he's got a bit of an ego as well from some tweets and all of that sort of lot. Naumon is their sub, is quite interesting. I like Naumon. He's not been, in the scene for a while, so he's coming back as a bit of a sub. I think it's an interesting roster. I can't wait to see them on the pitch. But if they, just completely bomb out, I'd be there like, okay, that makes sense.
I look, man, like, for me, I look at this shit and I look at what Flakes are saying, what he's trying to do. And I'm going to make a Counter-Strike comparison here because it is so fucking appropriate. It reminds me so much of Nico from FaZe Clan, okay? For those of you who don't know about Nico, he's basically the kind of player who's such a massive star, and he's got such a big sort of like air of ego around him that he thinks that everything he does is amazing, even though FaZe Clan right now are actual fucking shit. And it's partially down to the fact that Nico kind of built the roster around himself, and he tried to be the in-game leader, when the truth of the matter is that, knowing how to play the game as like from a mechanical perspective is not the same as knowing how to be a leader. And honestly, the stuff that Flakes has said, I could fucking probably pull a quote from fucking what's it called, from Nico, and probably just like put it there, and you think it's a fucking Flakes quote, just because of how like for like it sounds like in terms of the mentality behind it. And I understand, obviously, you want to play the same thing, you want to play in the same sort of play style, but it's like, if you get 3-star players together, it fundamentally just cannot work. And I can tell you why it can't work, because you were part of the same team where it didn't fucking work. FC Barcelona has been fucking full of missteps and failed potential and missed opportunities left, right, and center since its inception back in Savage, right? The only notable thing that they ever got in their own respect was, what was it, second place in one of the European regionals in season 7, actually, which was the biggest thing that they ever, was able to achieve. And even then, they bombed out at the season 7 finals. They bombed out in season 8. Obviously, in season 9, they got through what seems to be just 2 very unformed rosters. And obviously, in spring series, you fucking shit the bed. And that's been the case for the entire thing. Back when they were known as Savage, like we saw them going through the rival series, they smashed it out of the rival series. As soon as they hit championship level, shit hit the fan, and things couldn't go the way that they actually wanted it to. So, like, for this roster and for this team and for the composition of that, you can see how 3 players who adopt the exact same play style or the exact same role don't fucking work. And unless Flakes are just going to be the hard carry for this team, then that's the only way I can actually see it working for the benefit of his play style and the way that he wants to approach the game. But even then, that's only going to get you so far, because that's basically one player doing all the work while everybody else sits back and is basically dead weight to the team. Like, that's the way that I'm seeing things when it comes to Flakes. And again, credit to him because he wants to do his own thing, but I just don't think that thing's going to work.
I just find it quite funny where it's that he doesn't want to team with pros because pros don't want to do what he wants to do. That to me, you look at that and go, so basically you want guys that are no names and are willing to put up with you because they're hoping you're going to be able to take them to glory. That is what it is. You don't want to team with pros because pros will question you. You want a team with no names purely because they're not going to do that. Like,
that's such a Nico fucking thing to say. Like, oh my God. The equivalence is absolutely ridiculous, and I again, like respect to Flakes. I think he's a cool dude. I think he's got a lot of talent, but I just don't think this is going to work. So, best of luck to you. And we'll see who comes out on top, FCB or Flakes. Let's move on. Let's talk about a tier 2 team.
I
Let's
can't
talk about
wait for that game, by the way. That would be brilliant
Flakes
to see.
versus FCB.
Yeah, that would be so fun to watch.
I mean, look, I'm going to hold out judgment for when that match actually comes by, but we'll keep our eyes on that one. Anyways, Servette Geneva, failure of the last season of the rival series, success in the Swiss scene, at least that's what we thought until very recently, where the Swiss scene seems to have been able to upturn their former kings. But alas, here we are. Servette goes up on Twitter, so announcing that the Servette roster for Fusion is Servette, Mirrorwing, and Justuszzz. So obviously, we know Justuszzz, the Dutch dominator. This is definitely an interesting move. I know that Servette Geneva have been trying out different players and different teams, obviously in different tournaments, like, in TCS, for example, they were trying out Sizen. In Superstar League, they were trying out Batol, who's actually the sub for this particular roster. I don't know what they were doing with Swiss Esports League. I think they may have had Batol there as well. But they've been trying out various different players, and it seems the international roster they're going to settle on is Justuszzz for this one. So isolating that and comparing and contrasting to the other rosters that the Servette Geneva have fielded, what do you think of Justuszz's addition here to the Servette Geneva side? I
quite like it. So Sizen still wouldn't be able to do the next season of RLCS, if I'm correct, or the RLRS and qualify through due to age. So they like the lad, but realistically, they're looking towards the long term. Here you've got Justuszzz, who has experience already, and I can see this. It's another midfield man, basically. I'm hoping the idea of this team is to keep building up Mirror's confidence, especially with the number of online tournaments, and get him to a stage where he can be the striker. Because Safair can strike, yes, but his main focus should always be defense. His patience, the way he can just stall that ball in defense is fantastic, isn't it? So Justuszzz, who might be an easier fit for this team where he's a bit of an all-rounder, should hopefully be good, but only time will tell. The Fusion tournament will be an interesting one. I have no idea who's going to take the 1v1s on this team. 2v2s will be an easy Mirror and, Safair. But when it comes to the whole team together, I think it'll be super interesting. Hopefully, from what I've heard, Mirror and Sphere are actually quite easy to play with and naturally slot on in. But it just comes down to, you're easier to play with probably in ranked than maybe scrims. But when it comes to competitive Rocket League, when you're in that online, high-intensity environment, that is a whole different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that's why I absolutely love certain people who think that they're hot shit, because when they actually get thrown into that environment, they just don't even know what they're doing, and it's very obvious. For me, I haven't actually seen Justuszzz play in a very long time, so I don't really know what to make of this of this move, and to what I could expect out of these guys. Obviously, we saw him for RJM, and they did all right. But he was removed in place of Rix Ronde, which I guess could be a big sort of a thing for them. But ever since the rival series, I haven't really seen too much out of Justuszzz. And to be honest, back even in the rival series, he wasn't really one of those standout players that I thought, okay, he's going to be the fucking bomb. Even though RJM showed a lot of promise in their overall roster, I feel like that was more down to Mike Boy and Rizex to me. I don't know if Justuszzz was the guy that really turned things around for them. So I'm optimistic about what they could do here on the Servette Geneva side. And obviously I'm keeping an open mind with it. But, again, the issue for me has to revolve in the fact that, they need to find a new third before they solidify what they're going to do from here on out. Because, we've still got a number of issues outside of the move itself when it comes to Servette Geneva, that being Mirrorwing and his own confidence. Like, obviously we saw that throughout a lot of the course of the rival series. I'm just not sure where to weigh up this team with this roster move, because I don't think that the roster move itself is going to fix all the problems with Servette Geneva.
So the thing is right now that Servette Geneva have got their core with Fair and Mirror. It just comes down to what this third man can offer. Yagi was a great sort of offensive force, wasn't he? So that was a good pickup there. Sizen felt like he was a good offensive force as well. He was a little bit clutch in defense, but his main idea was his solo plays and being able to get that ball downfield really strongly. So Justuszzz coming on in as more of an all-rounder midfield man will be an interesting pickup. I don't think it's going to be the final pickup, like this is going to be it. This is Servette Geneva finally being able to compete for top 6 RLRS and stay there. I think this is just, they'll learn a lot about themselves and come up with the right decision after Fusion now.
Yeah, it's definitely an experimental roster for me, and I'll be curious to see how well Servette Geneva do. Obviously, they're losing their stranglehold over the Swiss scenes, so that's a storyline that I want to follow going into the TCS finals, but that's something that you guys won't be interested in. We'll probably highlight that tournament after it goes down, as we will highlight a lot of the other small tournaments we have going on. But for now, let's move on very quickly into the Tree of a Kind side, also known as Awkward Turtles plus eekso. Obviously, we were talking a little bit about Awkward Turtles last time around because they had gotten rid of Kash, who had his AS Monaco tryout. We're going to talk about Kash in a little bit more time. For this Awkward Turtle side, Mitane and Taz were looking for a third, and they're going to try out eekso, it seems, for this roster. Now, obviously, eekso had a bit of a failed tryout with the Triple Trouble, and now he's moving on to this new side, which is also Rival Series caliber. What do we think? How do we feel about this Tree of a Kind team?
I'm happy. So when they brought in for the Spring Series Tigree, we both looked at Jay and went, "What are you doing here? You don't need 3 midfielder, more defensive players. No. You need that attacker." When they unfortunately lost Kash, but here bringing in eekso, it makes perfect sense. This is a like for Kash, and hopefully they can refine that form which they had back in RLRS, because that's got to be the main goal right now for me.
Yeah, I think, again, for me, much similar to how I'm going to talk about the Servette Geneva, obviously, is the fact that I'm very optimistic for this roster. Obviously, I still got a lot of relevance and support for eekso. I still think he can do quite a lot of damage. He certainly has proven to be among that sort of caliber, obviously, winning lands and others in previous sort of stances. So I'm excited to see what he can do in this roster. I think it could be a good fit, but we'll have to see how well it will go. Again, a lot of unknowns for me about this particular lineup, so I'll keep an open mind on this one, and we'll just go broad strokes and move on to the next lineup, because this one's probably a little bit more interesting to those of you who are following these players. A lot, and Mognus did say that they were going to be teaming together going forward. They found their third for Fusion, and that third is Tigree. I don't think I have as much faith in this roster, to be honest.
What makes you think of that? Come on.
Here's the thing. Already, the main issue that we highlighted when it came to a lot of Mognus and their own sort of like partnership is the fact that it's run its course by this point. They split a long time ago. Obviously, Mognus and Metanaris was the better duo to me. Obviously, if they had teamed together, I would have thought they would have been a bit more successful. Obviously, it didn't work in Triple Trouble. Going back to Mognus and a lot, I can see a very similar result happening here. And already from the basis of that little core, I just think that it's not the right move. Tigree being the third, though, doesn't really improve that. For a lot of Mognus to get going here, then really they wanted to try and find fucking Flakes. That's the kind of player that we want to. That's the kind of player that we want to. We want to see with this kind of lineup. Tigree is not going to do much in the context of this team. This team is not going to do much when it comes to whatever. I just can't see this working well.
Yeah, literally, if you're going to pick up a lad like this, you're just going for name and I guess who you feel comfortable with, but calling yourself Source, this is weak Source right now. What on earth are these lads doing? If you want to make your way back into not only the RLRS, but then maybe try and contest back for the RLCS, we've said it before, Jay, you've got to try and pick up these new up-and-coming, really heavily mechanical players, because quite frankly, none of them are mechanical players. They're not going to be able to keep up the pace, put on threatening shots. This is a team that literally, for me, defines washed. This is a team which I look at and just go, well, if this is what you want your last competitive games to be like, you're sadistic.
Here's the thing, right? I don't think that all these players are necessarily washed per se, but I just think that this lineup does not work.
Exactly.
There's no reason for me to believe that compositionally it will work pretty well. And maybe you can make an argument for certain players being washed in certain cases, but it's just who is looking at Source? Who's looking at this team and thinking to themselves, "Oh fuck yeah, they're going to do well"? I can't think of a single person, to be honest.
The only player I can look at that team and go, "Oh, they might get wins," is Sam in ones. That is it.
They actually added him as the Source Ones player.
Yeah,
he's the fourth. In that respect, and
he can get one game for them.
I can see them getting the ones respect going, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the 2v2 and the 3v3, or maybe 2v2, Mognus and a lot will do pretty well, but in the 3v3 matches, that's where shit's gonna get real fucking bad. So definitely keep your eyes on the non-standard RLCS fucking or Rocket League matches or games, because that's the main areas that they're going to win at, because I just don't think that as a 3v3 team this team will do very well at all. But hey, plenty of room to prove me wrong, boys. Go right ahead. I mean, you've been very vocal on challenging us in the past, so go right ahead for it. I'm really excited to see how it goes. But we'll move on. Veloce is next. And they've replaced Freaki with Archie for Fusion. Ooh. Okay, now this fucking got real juicy real quick, because at first, and we'll sort of approach this from the perspective of like, look, Freaki's got health issues. Okay, that much has been very, very apparent on the that much has been very apparent on his Twitter as of late, where he's been having some issues with his face. I'm not sure what the specific issues are, but it looks like he's got numbness and pain, and he's been tweeting about it quite a lot recently, which obviously get well soon, Freaky. I really hope you're going to hold out here, because I think that obviously, like, when it comes to Veloce's team, losing Freaky would be a disaster. Alas, though, he can't play in this kind of position, and Veloce did opt to pick up Archie instead, which I think is a respectable player. And at first, I was just like, right, okay, well, that's fair enough. They want to keep playing. Freaky can't play physically, so therefore, just getting a temporary stand-in. That was until Freaky came up and tweeted, Almond's roster for Fusion RL, Godsmiller, Striker, and fucking Freaky. Like, what the hell happened here?
Oh, God. Like, to me, this just means he's off the roster, because there's no way you get in a sub, for it, and then the guy that you've subbed out goes and picks up his own team. This, to me, looks like Freaky's off. They're going for a better choice, and Archie's not a bad player, but again, this is straight on into the deep end for him. Don't get me wrong, again, we saw, just like Joreuz, him perform really well in that spring series, and he was my player of note for that team. Like, Joreuz is going to be the star player, but Archie was like the backbone towards that team and doing a fantastic job at it. So I can see him actually fitting into Veloce really well here, Jay. I think this team is going to surprise us in a brilliant way. I'd actually put Veloce right now as one of the 8 teams to qualify.
And you know what, honestly, I was going to say the same thing, actually. I thought this would be one of the points that we disagree on, but the truth is that Archie has been just an up-and-comer, and he's been fucking running through the scene. Like, the nice cactuses have been doing consistently well in. Obviously, the spring series was the big main thing that we talked about. With the European Rising Stars League, he came first. I think in Superstar League, he's also doing pretty respectable of his own right, because his team is quality control, and even though they've officially broken up, they're still topping out that leaderboard. So for Archie, he's obviously been the guy that we've highlighted as being the main man, and certainly he's getting his opportunities right now. And I think that even though it will fuck with the short-term sort of like position of Veloce, I think that in the long term, if they decide to pick him up, he'll be a good sort of player to bring him in. But I think in terms of replacing Freaky, I don't think it's worth it just yet. I think Archie's still got a little bit of development before he's really a championship series level player. Obviously, he's very young, so he's got a lot of room and a lot of time to grow. So I wouldn't be surprised that in the future, he becomes one of those RLCS level players. But I think that for now, Veloce should just keep Archie for this team and then move into bringing Freaky back in for the mainstay of competitions. I'm just very surprised that Freaky came out and announced his new team, because, like, to me, I feel like, given how he's been tweeting about how he's not in just the best of conditions, he should just be taking that time to rest. Whether or not he continues to do that is another thing entirely. I did want to move on to the flip side of this, though, because obviously Freaky's got his own roster: Godsmiller, Striker, and Freaky.
I don't know who Striker is.
That's the thing, right? Like, look, right? I respect freaking Godsmiller. I can give him a dark horse run, but Striker is a player that I haven't seen ever. I think I can't. Maybe he was in some sort of ESM or Nice Cactus match, but I honestly don't remember him being a player of any particular note, to be honest.
And just one quick thing, I don't think we put this on into the show plan, Jay, but one thing of note for Veloce is they just picked up Rams as their coach from Triple Trouble.
Yeah, I forgot that part.
We forgot that. We can bring it in now. It works. So that's an interesting aspect because Rams coming in as a coach, replacing Mystic. Now, Mystic, everyone thought was that coach / sub. So now they don't have a sub. Do Veloce run with bringing in Archie and then have both Archie and Freaki there? Like, and run a 4-man roster. That could be a little bit of pain, of course, with contracts, but I can see that as a very viable way in this offseason to run themselves. Especially since, as well, Veloce is a very heavily English esports org at times, so bringing in Archie works for that English aspect. But I feel like Veloce right now have got a very comfortable duo in Flame and Casio, and that third man, they can afford right now to test about with, especially with Fusion being a good ground to test them on.
Yeah, I mean,
my only problem is they've got no one to play ones in their team.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the one players, that's where the issues sort of arise. But personally, I don't give a fuck about that. I'm mostly focusing on the 3v3 aspect because that's what's pertinent to Rocket League esports. And I think that again, this lineup could have a bit of a shock on all moment in Fusion. But depending on who they face up against, they could also go out in the qualifiers. So I'll be curious to keep my eyes on this team. I think it could be a great idea. I think that with Rams obviously stepping in, he could be a good coach pickup. I've had a lot of respect to this guy. So you know, I think that in terms of the freaky stuff, we'll see where the cards fall in that respect. But let's move on to talk about BDS in what will be an interesting one, a very interesting one. Do you know what? At the very least, I'm pleasantly surprised that people didn't kick off on the drama side of this story because BDS announced the other day that ClayX is out of the team. So we'll start there. Because I don't think he was the right player to remove, Bacon. I don't think he. I honestly don't think that they should have removed ClayX. Like, I respect the decision to do so. And we'll cover that in more detail in the mailbag section. But for me, I feel like that this team had a little bit more room to grow going into the next season of the Championship Series. I respect the idea to make that roster move, but all things considered, I think that they were on the up and up. I think they had one bad performance in the in the spring series, which, you know, to their credit, like, you know, they were up against a team that now has one of their players on Veloce, and I think that just that one little spike in downfall is not enough for me to justify a big sort of shift around for BDS, as well as that they also lost to the best team in the world, or the best team in Europe, Vitality, probably the world Vitality, in that bracket. So for me, I can mitigate some of the circumstances surrounding those results. But they still removed ClayX for me, and I'm just like, okay, that's that's not how I would have gone about it, to be honest. I would have kept the team together for at least a little bit and see where we went from there.
So yeah, not only the fact that Archie going over to Veloce from Clappers, but there's also a link with Joreuz over to Dignitas, you know, so that well. Clappers team looking ready to have been picked up because everyone can see their power. But yeah,
except
I
poor Calix, who was the driving force behind this brand and this lineup, and still has not been picked up or rumored to be picked up by any big team. I always feel bad for the guy.
I feel bad for it, but Calix still, for me, only looks to be an RLRS player, competent RLRS player. I'd say, you know, top 6 to always stay in that bracket. Same to Rix Ronde, but do I see him making RLCS? Not really, not of his own accord, you know. But looking at this roster, I think you're absolutely right. Because you had me worried there for a second. You're like, ClayX was not the right man to move. I was like, oh boy, what are you saying? Get rid of Monkey Move? Yeah, what the fuck are you saying there?
Look, he's clearly the weakest player. Okay, let me clarify. Yeah, let me clarify, because, like, you know, I think that in the if you had to absolutely pick one player or die, it would have to be ClayX. But I also think that it's just not the right time to make that move. You know, I think that's the point I was trying to get at. You know, just to clarify for people. Even then, you know, I still think ClayX is a very, very respectable player. You know, like he had some really good fucking moments in the rival series. He's had some really good moments across his entire career. So for BDS, you know, again, I just feel like it was too soon and, you know, too quick to the move, Bacon.
I don't get what they're aiming to gain from this as well. ClayX, yes, did have some inconsistency issues. We know that. But when he's, you know, on form, he hits hard. Nachitel, yes, brings more consistency, but his highs are not as high as ClayX's. So I feel like this is at best a sideways move for BDS. So what do they really have to gain? This to me just seems like, younger team coming through to the RLCS, a sort of mindset issue, right?
I mean, well, that's the thing, right? I guess that kind of leads us into the next sort of thing onto that, because you talk about mindset and mentality issues, and well, ClayX did have a tweet longer out, which sort of describes his side of the story. And did you get a chance to read through this, Bacon?
Yes, I have.
You did. Because, and again, it's part of the reason why I'm glad that nobody picked up on the drama, because, I know and I guess it's partially down to the fact that Drama Alert's not here anymore, but he basically out and out said it. He's like, look, right, Monkey Moon's, I've been under unfair pressure in recent weeks, and I felt my own teammates didn't trust me. Monkey, I would say his bad attitude as a teammate and his low values when it comes to promoting the value of a team have been decisive for me to leave. I will not say bad about Mark and Kale since I shared too much with them, and I want to keep my stuff with Mark private. And it's like, well, that's just straight up fucking calling out Monkey Moon, for fuck's sake, and I think that obviously it seems like there's internal issues that have caused this roster to make that shift. And obviously he also made a mention that it was made at the end of spring series, which again, mitigating circumstances. You lost to a team that are now severely on the rise and one of the best teams in the world. Like, what the fuck do you have to take away from that? Anyway,
It's a big sign of know your place.
Yes.
That is a harsh way to put it. But if you were suddenly there, like Singularity this season, making their changes, if they're making that changes going, because we want to win worlds, you're there going, even bringing in, and we'll go on to this in a little bit, but even bringing in Scrub Killa, that ain't going to win you worlds, but boys, you've got to just realize where you are in the scene and come to a great realization. That's why when we look at this with BDS, and I mean, it's been called out, but Monkey Moon, dude, this was a team that next season should be able to fight to stay up. That is what you've got to make your goal. You're not going into next season of RLCS and winning it. Come on.
No.
Have that realization about yourself. And you do get this with teams. And I like the BDS, like the org behind it. They seem to be super solid. And I thought I liked this team, but I mean, that's sort of proof in how quickly they can turn on one of their own players is worrying.
Well, I mean, that's the case with, it seems to be every fucking roster, it seems, at the end of the day, I also appreciate the fact that it's business, and I don't blame Monkey Moon for thinking, hey, if we make this move, we'll be in a better place overall. And it's like, okay, fine, sure. I just think that, again, it was the wrong move to make at the wrong time, and I realize that as an outsider, that's very easy for me to say. Whether or not that will actually come up at the practice depends on who BDS's third will end up being, and they haven't confirmed any particular permanent thirds. They are trying Nachital out, which is going to be an interesting perspective. But again, for me, I feel like on the one hand, I feel for ClayX because I don't think the roster move should have been made, but I also kind of understand Monkey's position on this one, trying to be in this angle of right. Look, I want to be in the best team in the world, but that takes time. That takes development, and I think that if you would develop with ClayX, you would have found a better understanding of what it is you're looking for in the next tier of the scene. Because again, 2 results, that's not a good enough measure for me. Like a season, if you get relegated from that, sure, you know who you're going to pick up, you know what kind of player you're going to have, and what kind of play style you want to play to when it comes to progressing to the next level. But losing to 2 of the best teams that you could argue, or some of the best players in the entire tournament, like that's just not enough to go off of for me. So like for BDS, I think they made a mistake, and I'll be curious to see where they go from here. Nachital is their stand-in for this one. Quick thoughts on what you think about this guy. Obviously, he's got that Spanish pride in for them, but what do you think about this team's performance together in going forward in Fusion and in other tournaments?
Like I said, I was a little shocked that they got rid of him off of Endpoint. I can see it, but I feel like Nachital, their hoping is just going to bring more consistency, more stability to the team. But again, that just feels so weird. So sideways performance. If BDS don't make top 8, I probably won't be massively surprised, of course, with new roster. But considering how many new players are joining new teams at the moment, their goal should still be to qualify through in probably the lower bracket if they do it. So BDS, we'll have to see, but I don't think their test is coming in and qualifies. It'll be after that, because then with that little bit of experience, a little bit of time, they won't have excuses at that point, you know?
Indeed, yeah, no excuses anymore. Right, let's move on to our next story, our next roster. Singularity trying out Scrub Killa to confirm the rumors that have been flying around, and in particular, quite funny because Scrub Killa was chatting shit about Though back when the rumors originally cropped up, so it was quite an entertaining sort of read to see this come through, and it's like, now Scrub's got to fucking eat his own words. But they are trying him out. And this isn't an official move, obviously. Scrub Killa's already made that apparent. I think it's already been made apparent in terms of Singularity's perspective in this whole thing. And they'll have him in exclusively, it seems, a Fusion to see how well it will go. Obviously, for him to get picked up, it means it's a massive 1v1 pickup for Singularity. They'll have a great sort of stance in those matches. For the 3v3s, though, as well, I want to talk things about, because obviously him being such a big player to add to the Singularity side, like when we were touting players to move in place of Godsmiller, like obviously we were saying Scrub Killa has got to be your guy, and well, here he is. So now it's probably going to have to prove the points we were making back in those previous episodes, because like I don't think you could have found a better free agent, to be honest.
Oh, definitely. Like, Singularity had picked up the best free agent there is at the moment. My big question, though, from Scrub, because he recently signed up with, like, a talent agency.
I think that's for his content rather than his player situation. Yeah. I'm not sure what this deal is with that. I personally don't care, because it's not esports directly. I know that there are agents that sort of, like, handle stuff like negotiations and such, and, I've had an agent in the past for esports work, so, in that respect, it's not really related to the team per se. It's probably he's probably got this agency from the esports side of things, so that way he doesn't run into the same contract problems that he had with Mousesports. So that's my take on that whole thing. I don't think it affects anything in respect to the Singularity move.
I was going to say, like, to me, this looks like he's probably just firmed himself up, and after getting this secure, and it's like a management firm for him, he probably feels a lot more confident in his future and where to go. And we just hope Singularity can, I'm guessing pay the price for him, because I'd imagine he's probably come to this team looking for a hefty contract. And I don't know, he could be the lad that could see this team make it to a top 4 spot. But is it like... This team for me is a lot of uncertainty, because it's got so much potential, but I don't know if they'll reach that potential, because you've got a lot of big voices there. Definitely Scrub coming on in as a massive name for the pickup. We'll just have to see what they do, but Singularity for me will be gunning for one of those 8 spots. Definitely. This is one with Scrub and how he plays, like with new players anyway. This is one where they should be going on through, and anything less will just be absolute disappointment. They are going to look to slap about their opponents straight out the gates.
Yeah, and I think that I feel like that we've kind of covered all the necessary sort of bits and pieces about that. And if they don't make it to the main event, at least that's like the minimum sort of like standard for me. After that, I guess we'll see how well they'll do in the individual brackets. Obviously, with each one being different game modes, you can only go so far with that. So let's move on and talk about our final roster move in this grand sweeping big rostermania start, because Triple Trouble have announced their newest tryout. Obviously, the last one didn't go so well, but Kash is back in. After a successful tryout with AS Monaco, I didn't expect him to be moving out so quickly. I'm not sure if they didn't like his particular performance.
No. This really? Is all on Kash.
It's all on Kash. Okay.
So Kash is... I am actually going to call him out and say he's smart here, because he is looking like, with his performance last season, every RLRS team wants him. And he knows that. So he's trying with every single team. After Fusion, he'll make his choice. And he's just got hope, like, with AS Monaco, that will stick. But right now, it's looking like he's going to have that final try with Triple Trouble. Then he sort of like had a test with each of the confirmed RLRS teams next season, and he'll pick from there. For me, I'm looking at this and just going, I reckon he'll probably stick with AS Monaco with that kind of performance, because I can't see him matching that with Tadpole and probably, yeah, and Tadpole and Bluey here. So it's going to be super interesting. Do we think they're going to make it on 3J? That's the question.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because like you talk about him and what he can do, and the question for me is, can he be another Alpha? Because remember, Alpha, the reason why he's so successful right now is because he went from being a striker to a bit more of a weird sort of like independent, sort of like versatile role. Mm-hmm. So his transition in that and his versatility there was very well for both Rival Series and Championship Series level. And for Kash, obviously going from a very prominent sort of role in his old team to now this new lineup where you've got Tadpole as the definitive captain, Bluey who's the definitive unbeknownst and unchallenged striker, and it's like, where does Kash slot into the lineup is the question for me, because I think that he could very well be a major part of the system, but with Tadpole and the way that he plays, he doesn't really play in like the way that Fruity captains a team, in the sense that he goes back and plays supportive and tries to be the backbone. He plays a bit more like has a bit more of an active role in the striking and everything else with the Triple Trouble lineup. So for me, I feel like very similar to the way that eekso, Kash could get quite lost in this lineup.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree, and I think this team is going to flop. I don't think it's going to work at all.
That's going to be so degrading for Kash as well, because like he could have stuck with AS Monaco, who I think honestly they had something really good going for them there. Like, yeah, they didn't make it to the main Spring Series tournament, but they did lose to a team that went pretty deep into it and only lost to the second place team in the end. I think that AS Monaco, given one slightly better performance. Infusion.
So I think he's going to be able to go back quite comfortably, because he's being very open about what he's doing right now, which doesn't leave any bad feelings. He knows it's going to be a long off season. So I reckon this is going to be a flop. He goes back to AS Monaco and like, yeah, with how we performed in Spring Series qualifiers, yeah, let's try and build this right now.
Yeah, I think Kash has got a number of options ahead of him. I'll be curious to hear out in the Triple Trouble lineup, but I think that they're still going to be looking for that third after Fusion, because I just don't think Kash is the right guy. Even though Kash is such a good player and he's got such a good future ahead of him, possibly RLCS talent, I just don't think this is the lineup that's going to do it for him. So, we'll see this tryout fail and see where it goes from there. And that's going to conclude. Go on.
I was going to say the bigger thing, and I hope one of the two are listening. Tadpole, Bluey, stop bringing in strikers. You need to get another supportive player. This should be obvious right now. I know you don't like it because everyone thinks, oh, we should be a three-man team. But no. Just no. Come on, lads. You're just looking silly.
Well, Tadpole, I know he listens to the show, so, that's definitely directed at you more than anything else from Digital Bacon. And we'll see how well Triple Trouble do in Fusion and beyond, especially in those qualifiers, right? That's it for the news. That's it for our big roster breakdown. Like, we probably spent about 2 hours on this shit already, or like at least an hour and a half on the news section already. And we've got 1 more hour left in the show. So let's try and see if we can speed through a number of these topics before we get started. Our first segment, of course, after the news will be the mailbag section. Of course, if you want to get involved in the show, the only way is through the mailbag section. Go to the Discord in the show notes and video description of every single episode of the podcast. Click that link, follow us into our community, and go to the mailbag channel where you can ask a question like Aspect has done. And this is going to be a fucking doozy because he's basically written an entire paragraph. I appreciate the details, mate, but that makes timestamps fucking difficult, especially when I'm on a character limit in the fucking description. Okay, so Aspect asks, with the news that ClayX may be off the BDS roster without ever having played a game for them in the RLCS, how do you guys feel about teams that have just promoted to an RLCS making a change, whether that be kicking a player or a player leaving to join a different RLCS team? I have seen some people suggesting that Psyonix should implement a rule that newly promoted teams have to stick with the same roster for their first season. While I think this could potentially be a good change, the flip side argument is that the rule may never allow upcoming players to flourish. For example, would Justin be the same player now would Justin be the same player he is now if he had never left OOS to join NRG straight after promoting to RLCS? Well, basically, you've answered your question right there for the sake of us. Like, I like it's either the former or the latter in that respect. Like, which side do you rest on? For me, I'm resting on the latter because I don't think that that losing a player, that kicking a player is a bad thing when promoting to the RLCS. Like, just look at what Veloce did. Well, you might not respect the move itself. What you might think is a bit dickish to kick a player after you've just promoted with that player. Think about what Veloce did. They kicked Nils Cook, they picked up Cassio, and ever since then, it's been hunky-dory. They've had some questionable things. We've talked about them maybe skating by on certain results, but this past gone season, I think that most of their results have been pretty legit. And I think that's all in all, that those can be positive sort of elements. Like, yes, I don't think any roster that can make it through from the rival series could go on to be championship-winning teams. And at the end of the day, when you get to championship series level, you're looking to try and make it to that next step. And I think that if you could see a move that will get you there, then you should be allowed to make it. I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing all the time. While there can be some salty people, individuals, and obviously, some people that think, hey, I've been hard done by. Like, at the end of the day, it's business. I don't think that you should be treating this as like an unbreakable friendship if you're in a team. You've got to make moves to get to the top end of the things, and sometimes you're going to be the guy that gets cut. And that sucks, sure, but you got to take it on the chin and move on with the next with the next with the next project. You just got to the path to success is not a win and fail sort of split. It's usually a case that you just go through fail after fail after fail after fail until you hit something that's successful. And sometimes you never hit that. Sometimes you hit it on your first try. Sometimes it's a bit of a complicated thing. And I just think that in the case of ClayX obviously being off the BDS roster, he's still got talent. I still think he's got an opportunity to move in. Like I said, I don't agree with the move, but it's absolutely within the right of Monkey and Mark to make that move.
Yeah, if they feel like with ClayX in this upcoming season, they're not going to be able to, let's just say, secure themselves with him on the team into RLCS for the following season, yeah, that is completely within their right to make that move. Again, Jay, like you said, we don't believe it's the right one. And you've seen, let's just talk of this previous season with both SNG and Endpoint sticking with the roster. Singularity just got that 7th place spot. But Endpoint were in the relegation tournament. Should Endpoint have made their roster move beforehand and maybe secure themselves? Who knows? You don't know that answer for sure because it never happened. And that's always the case, isn't it? So right now it comes down to players. But like we said before, it feels like it's too... Maybe our only problem is that it's too brash for the players to be making these decisions. They need to think it out a little bit more. Whether that comes down to Psyonix trying to force orgs to have a heavier say, that could help, because then the orgs can take their knowledge and their wisdom from working within other esports and apply that to their players, especially with their previous knowledge of Rocket League. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, and you can't blame the teams for making those changes.
Yeah, and I think that anybody who suggests the idea of implementing a rule like that is just a little bit missing the point to me. So let it be what it is. Accept the moves as they go, and if you're in that position where you're on the wrong receiving end of that, then just fucking take it on the chin, move on. It's unlucky, mate, but that's just the way that things work, and this applies to any roster move. Just stop taking it personally, guys. If you go out on Twitter and start slamming the fuck out of your teammates or your ex-teammates, you're just going to look really fucking unprofessional, and you don't want that to happen because people are watching this, and that people have already got enough reasons not to enter Rocket League. Don't be another one to add to the fucking list. Anyways, thank you, Aspect, for your question. Move on and talk about Trox. He asks us, half-yearly, what does Rocket League Esports need to propel the game forwards question? Which is sort of like his recurring thing. Sort of like, hey, what the fuck do we need to let Rocket League Esports propel the game forwards? I mean, the thing about this is that there's a lot of solutions. Obviously, I'm a very big proponent of open circuit because I'm just like, hey, let us take control of it and show you fuckers up at Psyonix because I think we can do a better job. Realistically, though, that's not going to happen. And like I said, with the whole spring series thing, we just need to see a big tournament circuit and a lot of different tournaments being posted up here for the COVID season, so we can get some online stuff going, so we can fucking sell some product because to get us in ESPN and BBC, they're going to be hampering for content. They're going to be needing some shit going on their channel. So that's the perfect chance to get on TV, perfect chance to put us in front of a big audience. And it's in order to do that, we need some big tournaments. We need Psyonix to support those tournaments because they're obviously good at content syndication, as they've proven with the Spring Series broadcasts. So For me, that's the big thing. It's getting Psyonix to just say, hey, let's do a shit ton of tournaments, pump a load of money into it, and just say, fuck it for the next 6 months, you know?
Yeah, like for me, the easy response is a competent, management team for the esports side of things, but realistically, yeah, you just got to start putting something out. When we've gone over this so many times, Jay. When you're there, not knowing what is next, like we're just assuming RLCS is happening next season because the team's got their spot, but we don't know anything about that. Any times you look towards, say, League of Legends, that, and when the next season is going to be happening. Like it's all laid out ahead of you. The same with Counter-Strike goes on for ages. You know what's happening at the end of this year, don't you, Jay? Even the start of next year. With Rocket League, we don't know. Like, okay, so we got this off season. When does the off season end? When is next season started? That should be something easy to put in, penciled down. Even giving us a range of dates, like a 2-week window. That's all we ask for, but none of that right now. For me, that's big because it also means, like, straight up for many different projects And right now, if you've got a tournament that you're trying to run, let's just take, for example, the Swiss scene, Jay, because we know that quite intimately. When they're trying to book in when their finals are, so that they don't overrun with RLCS, they don't overrun with major tournaments, because they're trying to get as many viewers as they can, because they're really, skating on thin ice a lot of the time with these lower tournaments. They're trying to figure it out. And when that isn't public, when that isn't known, and they go to Psyonix, they ask for it, and they're not trusted, naturally, because Psyonix don't seem to trust anyone with any knowledge. They can't do anything there. They're just hoping. Suddenly it gets announced once they've done their announcement, and they're just there like either going, thank fuck we dodged the bullet there, or they've been hit and they suddenly go, right, do we just have to go ahead with this, or do we have to change?
How do we fix this?
What do we do? Do we just have to bite the bullet and maybe make our finals instead of being like what they were trying to do at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, because that's like prime time? Do they then have to change it to being 10 a.m. in the morning because they can't be broadcasting at the same time as the RLCS? You're just creating more problems by being so inadequate.
Yeah, and I think, again, that just kind of serves Psyonix's bottom line only, and it doesn't do anything for the esports infrastructure as it stands, which obviously is the main issue, I think, when it comes to that whole thing.
Themselves as a game as well. It's so
absolutely
crazy.
Like, here's the thing. Like, while a lot of companies and developers don't want to believe this, the fact of the matter is that a good esports infrastructure promotes the game by default. Okay? Look at Counter-Strike. That is... the best example is for me, actually, is going to be Counter-Strike, actually, because, like, you see how fucking this entire circuit is going, and it's like, you think Counter-Strike, a game that came out in 2012, is still doing well with an old engine, old assets, and, a fucking, a really old style of game that's been going on, that's been unchanged since, like, 1999. It's like, you look at that, and it's like, hey, maybe they've got something going for them here with this whole esports promotion thing. Like, maybe the reason why they're breaking out fucking, player-based records at 1.3 million, concurrent players at any one time at its peak, is like, maybe they might have something going on here. And trust me, it's not because Valve are doing anything with their promotion. They have not run a fucking Counter-Strike ad in decades. Okay. Yeah. It's all been down to the interaction of the community, a little bit of content and output in terms of the operations, and of course the esport being the primary focus of the fucking game, right? That is the reality of the situation. And I think that, Psyonix need to do a whole lot more when it comes to cracking the next thing over, not only just in terms of, allowing a few more, allowing a few more community TOs to make, or other third-party tournament organizers to make majors and make other things. For me in particular, I think that the main thing that they have to do is also establish a calendar before the calendar begins. Just get together in September and just go on through the next couple of months. Just be like, right, we want to put RLCS here and here. We want to have majors here, here, and here. We want DreamHack to do these, we want these guys to do that, and just spend a few months to fucking organize the future of the next year of the calendar. And that should be enough to set things up, Then that, communicate with your partners, communicate with your players, good tournament organizers will find that out anyway because they're fucking good at their jobs. And then from there, they'll be able to run an actual circuit, that's how it should be going from my perspective. But I don't see that happening whatsoever when it comes to Rocket League. And again, the issue comes down to Psyonix needing to step up to the plate and do things on their end.
Yeah, and again, it's just not hard to sign NDAs and all of that. Keep it to very small teams that know it. My best example, Jay, right now going on within Rainbow Six, they're doing a lot of little national leagues. One that was just announced, officially sponsored, was the UK and Ireland one, where they're just keeping it very close, very online. And then you've got organizations like Epic Land or whatever that are doing their online lands this time around. So they're taking what they would be doing in LAN, but instead putting it online. A lot cheaper for them, of course. They've got lots less overheads, but they're still trying to keep the name and brand going. And they're running it at the exact same times, the exact same dates as the official Ubisoft, Rainbow Six Siege sponsored tournaments. The difference is that they're not doing it at the same times, and they work this out together. And that is just what you want. Those players, yes, might be stretched thin across those dates, but the result is that they've got 2 tournaments to play in, opportunity to make not double the amount of money, but more money. They're not going to turn that down, are they? And it just feels so weird that Psyonix can't think of that same thing. Yes, there could be a European tournament taking place on the Saturday. Yes, it's on RLCS weekend, but there is no European Rocket League officially on the Saturday. Why can't you put something there? It's not going to clash with the NA side of things because the NA won't start until, it's normally like about 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, European side. So you just tell them, yeah, you're allowed to have European Rocket League going, but it just has to have this as the cutoff point. And your finals have to be in the morning or, early afternoon before we go live with the European stream. It's not a hard thing to get your head around, is it?
And understand, this is not exactly a new prospect or a concept like this in esports, right? Dota 2, every year, Valve, they go ahead and they communicate all this information. They communicate, not only where they want their majors and minors to be, but what you can and can't stream, which for the most part is just go fucking ham, boys, Their way of doing things in Dota is to enforce a circuit by prestige rather than by limitation, which has worked so fucking wonderfully because it means that not only does the pro circuit establish a good professional scene and also promote the game through Valve's own indirect, from their own direct contributions, it also means that they promote the game through indirect sort of allowing open tournaments to work within that context. They allow other tournament organizers to make whatever tournament they fucking want. You can be a low level TO and do it like that. And from there, things just kind of work out, if that makes any sense. Because for me, it feels just very haphazard in the way things are going about in terms of the organization of things for Psyonix. And again, they're going to do so much better with it for me. And I think once they can crack that, then that's when we'll move into the next the next step for Rocket League esports for me. Just that development side needs to be worked on. But thank you for your question, Trox. If you want to know more details on that, by the way, then just go check out our State of the Scene address because we address basically everything that we just talked about and then some for what Rocket League needs to be and what Rocket League needs to improve upon. Not Blonde Monkey asks us, when do you see... Blonde has asked us, when do you see the next region being added to RLCS? Your answer is never. Thank you for your question. Moving on. In all seriousness, though, we've seen promises from fucking Asia for the longest time ever, and none of them have been fulfilled. So what the fuck do you expect me to answer here? What are you expecting from the RLCS? I just don't see anything fucking coming up anytime soon. Unless there's somehow
they'll only get added if there's a whole restructuring of everything. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, the only way I can see any region being added is if somehow in Civic's massive sponsorship of Johnny Boy's tournament somehow convinces them that, hey, Sandrock need to be involved in the RLCS, and then they fund an MEA and... no,
they'll just get thrown in with EU. It'll just be slapped on, stapled on. Actually, the more likely thing is
that's what I'm saying, right?
Because we don't know it, if somehow over in China, with what Tencent's doing... if Rocket League becomes big in China and then suddenly Tencent with their part of it just suddenly go, okay, can we have 1 team, 2 teams that get their spot into Worlds? Can we just have that as stapled on? We'll run our end and then you just bring them on that. That's the only way that I can see the next region getting their own little bit,
Yeah, I mean, those are the only two outcomes that I could see coming through for it. But that's like, again, the realistic terms of that happening, it's fucking very unlikely. Like, that's just the way that things go when it comes to Psyonix, is that they're very ignorant to the actual goings on outside the scene. Like, Asia, I think, needs to be represented. But the only way that's going to happen is if we do an overhaul of the scene. I'd love to see Middle East get a chance at the Rocket League space. Same thing with CIS. And I think if you combine those two regions, the pings would be okay and everything would just kind of work out pretty well for them. But the truth of the matter is that the Psyonix just don't care about that. They want to support their own individual regions. They don't even want to touch fucking OCE and South America directly. They just want to leave those to Rocket Street and whoever the fucking
Europe as it is already. Like
that's exactly what I mean. And that's the fucking major region. So like, what are you expecting out of newer regions? Like, I just don't see any of it happening. So. Like, it's a quick one to answer, and I realize it's a bit disappointing, but even so, it's just like, what else are we? What else do we expect to? Do we expect out of the Rocket League scene? Like, just not much that you can hope for at the end of the day. So, I'm hoping, and I'm praying, but to be honest, I can't expect. So, thank you for your question, Blonders. I think we've got about enough time. Do you think we've got enough time for the last two questions? Should we leave them for this week?
Do we want to do the tournament roundup? Because we can either leave the tournament roundup for next week and do it then, covering what we've got now, or we can cut this out. Your choice, Jay. Do we do more mailbag questions?
Let's do more mailbag, and if we take forever to do that, then if we can finish it up in the next 15 minutes, I say, then we can do the tournament roundup. So. John, aka Always, asks us thoughts/comments/reactions to this post by the dad of RLEsports himself on Liefx. He also clarifies it's a serious mailbag. Don't worry, I do know. He links up this thread on Reddit from CloudFuel, basically ranting about the leaks that have been coming out from stuff like guys like us and from Shift and from whoever the hell else has been promoting the stuff that maybe the common individual is not really aware of when it comes to Rocket League esports transfers. Now, his general sort of like prospect is against the idea of leaks. His argument against them seems to be like, these types of leaks force players and teams and organizations to change their announcement plans or rob them of an opportunity to announce their own schedule and deflate what would otherwise be an exciting reveal. And to that I respond, you really would not like fucking football transfer rumors, mate. Like, holy shit. It's worse. Like, here's the thing, right? We, Shift the leakers, we don't do as much journalism as we should do here on the show, even though we try our best to do as much as we can. And like, those guys are fucking manic. So like, if you're comparing it to regular sports, like, this is just commonplace. Like, people want to know about these things. Like, despite what the vocal minority will say, like, oh, leaks are bad, who are you to be trusted? It's like, the truth of the matter is that the reason why we do these things is because they get attention coming our way, and they get us views, and they get us what we need to. Like, some of the most popular articles on the website have been the roster rumor roundups. So, and some of the most popular sort of parts of the show, as according to our analytics, have been the times where we report on things that people don't otherwise know about. And part of it is down to our punditry and expertise. But, that's just the way, the lay of the land. People are interested in this stuff, and we're going to give it to them with being the first source to be that, assuming it's correct,
Yeah, the only thing that could fix this, Joe, and we've seen it with, you'll know it from CS as well, is the orgs themselves coming to us, or, to these leakers, whatever, when you see them, and just going, okay, this is happening, we can confirm it with you, but through professional respect, we want you to hold off on announcing this, on leaking it, or putting it out on, a post or whatever, until a certain date when this is all set in stone, because we don't want these plans. And it's basically transparency at the end of the day, because there's a lot of professional respect within Rocket League. If you say to someone, like, let's just say Shift, suddenly had orgs come to him and say, you will be the first that can post this, but can you do it on this date when everything is set in stone? We want you to, we'll allow you to put an hour beforehand, instead of leaking today. Most people, and I definitely know with the respect of the Shift guys, that they'll probably go, yeah, sure, we can do that. That's absolutely fine. Because we're still getting our aspect. We're still getting our leaks out there. We're still getting the views rolling through that way, because largely the first hour is when you get most of your viewership, and isn't it, on Twitter and all of that. So if they're still getting what they want, and respectfully from the org, it looks better, it's all a win-win. It just comes down to a lot of professional respect, and then in some cases, you know, signing stuff like NDAs, holding yourself accountable to following through with it.
Yeah, no, and I just think that, you know, even then, like, you know, it just proves that you're a good journalist if you can access these stories before the fact, and if you can, you know, verify them and report on them, then that's absolutely fine. You know, again, this is just common practice. You know, like, you know, I'm not sure why Cloud's so against it, even though he stated his arguments. It just feels to me that it's just like, you know, just more of like I feel like we shouldn't have a leak sort of thing, and it's like, well, sorry, that's not how the world works. It
feels more like it's no longer fun with all the speculation, because the speculation isn't there, you know? I think that's where it's coming from, where the fun of it, or what's going to happen in this off-season, is just being taken away, because instantly everyone knows straight away, because the leaks are coming out, because quite frankly, the players are moving fast, and the guys that are giving the information and putting it out there are moving just as quick.
Yeah, and, you know, it's just good journalism at the end of the day. That's the way that I see rants. That's the way I see leaks, I should say. And I just don't think the rant. I don't think I agree with the rant. Even though, you know, CloudFuel has a bit of a stance to hold up upon. I think that for the most part, the comments in this thread kind of you know, in this sort of thing really sort of you know, highlights sort of like the issues with his logic. And again, credit to CloudFuel, he's one of those guys that will keep an open mind and obviously accept other sort of ideas. Like there's one actually thread in that comment in that thread which basically respectfully disagrees and just like, look, you know, people discuss this information, so you know they can critique and applaud it depending on how good it is. But you know, this is common in sports. And CloudFuel basically responded to basically, fair enough, I definitely enjoy insight and behind the scenes information, but only when it's released in a professional manner, which for the most part is what we're trying to do at the end of the day, you know. Like we're not fucking, you know, like just tossing around fucking random guesses and shit. Like we have inside information. We RLAfterShock verify our sources so fucking much. The problem is that I've got so much other shit to do that at the end of the day Shift can get there first. So, you know, like credit to them.
And yeah, that's why, like, we've had ones in the past where we've held off on releasing just because it felt like we shouldn't be announcing that, you know.
Yeah,
there are so many cases like that. So
like
unless
the first one that comes to mind is Ronicky leaving Triple Trouble. Like we knew about that the day before it happened. So, you know,
we know, like, if we wanted to, we could just do what Shift are doing, putting out tweets. Probably not as pretty with all the graphics, we know, even though you could probably just get templates set up. But we don't feel like that's our area to do stuff, is it?
We're definitely more in the content side of things. And, of course, you can keep your eyes on all that content. Hopefully, I've got another roster rumor roundup coming up very soon on RLAftershock.com. So make sure you're tuning into all that, of course, on RLAftershock.com. And thank you again for your question, John, aka always. The last question coming in from Veloce. So, what do you suspect is wrong at Psyonix, and what do you think needs to happen in order for Psyonix to rethink their handling of the esport? Now, the first part of that question, simply, is that Psyonix don't want to take risks anymore. Based on the information that I've been able to gather and stuff that I've had with conversations from people who have worked directly or indirectly with Psyonix, you know, they just don't really want to. They just don't really want to, you know, take a gamble on any further esports operations, and that's kind of like just, you know, been reflected in the attitude of a lot of the staff members, really. Like, you know, before, when it comes to Rocket League esports, a lot of the esports team, you could get a hold of them so easily, but lately that's not been the case. Like, I've not even had a response at all, you know, to a lot of the stuff that I've tried to send to other people. So, you know, I'm just not really, I just don't really think that they fucking really, I just don't think that they have the ambition there anymore, to be honest. Like, you know, maybe at one point they did have it, but they just don't really have, I just don't really think that they're just interested in doing Rocket League esports as much as they were. You know, maybe there was some ambition when Josh was leading the team. Maybe there was some ambition when they first did the RLCS. But as of right now, like, it feels like the approach is just run RLCS and put our fingers in their ears until everybody shuts up about Rocket League esports and where it needs to go. And it's like, that's just not the right way to approach it, just because it feels so fucking, you know, I'm not sure. Yeah, corporate, you know, like it's one of those things. We were having a discussion in Discord the other day. It's like, you know, why wouldn't Psyonix put more money into their esports operation? It's because, well, it's better to run RLCS as a marketing gimmick rather than run a whole esports infrastructure, because you can guarantee a certain level of return on one tournament. You can't guarantee any return on there's no guarantee on a whole esports infrastructure, even though there is a certain level of guarantee if you take a look at Dota. And as well as that, you can't really you know, you can't really compare the cost of running 2 tournaments a year, or a small budget for a few tournaments a year versus the cost of creating an entire esport. Like, the costs are just way too high. And for a company like Psyonix, who are just interested in developing games, who have taken their risk in developing Rocket League in the first place, it feels to me like they don't want to take a risk and capitalize on what the game could be.
Yeah, and again, the game just feels more like the casual audience is the focus here. It's not trying to push itself to be super serious, which with a game where it is all heavily based on skill, like Rocket League, you've got to go for that esports market. You can easily see this when you're watching on Twitch and you see, I'm just going to point out a normal stream like Lyric or whatever who does more of a variety basis. You can just see that their silver playstyle, and you're just there going, this is absolutely shit. This is not entertaining. I guess the streamer himself is a bit entertaining, but where I don't know a massive amount of them, I don't watch them regularly, I'm not getting anything from this. Whereas if you tune into any of the pros playing whatever, you're watching this and being amazed about what they can do. So that always feels a bit with me. Right now, Jay, the Epic mystery sales that they've started doing, GTA just came out. I actually feel like I could see in a couple of weeks, maybe Rocket League going on free for a week, and that's how they announce to Epic, because it's always been that way, hasn't it, for a while? When is it going on the Epic store? Some people thinking it's going to go free to play. I feel like this whole scene, the reason why the esports has gone quiet, is that their current focus is on the casual market, and the large focus of Psyonix is getting it finally onto the Epic store. Like, that can be my only logical reason on why shit has just hit the fan and nothing has been prepared, because that has not been the focus of Psyonix,
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's the reason why I want Epic to take over and run the esports operation, because for me, I feel like just let them pump that money in and support the entire infrastructure, because they've got an infinite amount of money that you can tell that if they're able to put GTA up on their service for free, they've got money to fucking burn, guys, right? Like, that's just the reality of the situation.
Agreement that they came to, especially when, it's run off a different thing, and you look at the Ubisoft games that have been going up on everything like that. Epic have money to burn, and I think at the same time they come to good agreements, because you look at this one with Rockstar where they or 2K, I guess, where they put it on in and given everyone, because it's the ultimate version of the game, 1 million in-game credits, which realistically isn't a massive amount, with how bad the GTA economy has got. But that's still, you're giving away free money. You're giving away what many have grinded for ages to get. And don't get me wrong, the game's like years old right now, but it's still one that constantly has a high fan base. GTA didn't need to go for free. It's already a massive game. You look at all the role play that revitalized it on that. So for them to bring this in now, that's just more Epic making a play rather than 2K/Rockstar, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just think that when you can sort out deals like that, then running an esport for Epic shouldn't be that hard. Again, just swing your big dick energy, pump shit tons of money into the championship series, maybe put some incentives behind some tournament organizers to run some third-party tournaments, and just create a circuit based off of that. And maybe not even too much of that. Just say, look, right, you will be included
Make a bidding
in
process.
Yeah,
easily
fuck it,
stuff.
Fuck it, that's what they do in the CS:GO majors. So I just say, hey, bid for our big sort of major tournaments here in the circuit, right? You can do so as long as you don't call it a world championship, because that's reserved for us. And then we'll do the organization and
summer season series, autumn. They're suddenly open to anyone to run, and they are bidded upon for who gets to take that for the period. All happening on the Rocket League broadcast, but you're paid and you're trying to fight for the right for production. That is easily done.
I mean, that's the thing. This is a hobby. I've been putting together my own plan for how I'd run an esports, how I'd run an esport, basically. And one of the things that I said was like, look, you run X numbers of majors per, per quarter, and then you run X numbers of majors per thing. And my idea would be that like you run like one World Championship event every quarter or so, and then based on who is the biggest and and based on who ran the best major, you just give them a white label project to allow them to run that World Championship in their own right. So let's just say, ESL run the best run the best major of the first quarter, therefore they get the World Championship of that quarter. DreamHack run the best major of the second quarter, therefore they get the World Championship of that quarter, for example. Just to maybe you can send that into half years, for example, and then from that way you encourage competition, you encourage development from each of the developers, and that's also minimal-ish sort of investment from you. You just have to put the money behind the World Championships, you have to put the money behind giving those guys the necessary funding to run those tournaments as white label projects. But even so, I think it's a better system than what we got right now, where it's just Psyonix control everything and they do a shit job of doing it. That's the way that I'd see things.
Oh, yeah, definitely agree. And you get so many different, like we said, production companies out there, which if they had the chance to officially jump into Rocket League, would bloody do that in a heartbeat. But it's all being hampered and really not given the justice that it needs to be.
Indeed. And thank you very much for your question, Felix. I think that hopefully answers your own question. And that's going to be it for the mailbag for this week. I do know that there's one question that we haven't answered, and we'll get to answering that next week. Again, if you want to answer those questions, and of course you can do so in the mailbag section on the Discord server, which you can find in the show notes of the description of every single episode of the podcast. Again, go ahead and click that link and join our little community of Rocket League European fans. So let's move on to our tournament round. Let's try and make this quick, Bacon, because we have 25 minutes before we have to get the fuck out of here. Superstar League has been going on in their own little corner of the Rocket League space. So despite Psyonix's active sort of limitations on third-party tournaments, Rocket Baguette & Co. has still been able to throw this whole thing together. It's got 5 different language broadcasts, which of course you can get involved in and watching your own particular language. And we've got 2 groups from the Superstar Leagues, of course, with all the teams that have come through from the Star League tournaments, which we covered a few episodes ago. Each of those individual tournaments from the Rocket Baguette, Golden Dusk, Team Firewall, and Europa Rising Stars tournaments. So your groups as of the first couple of weeks of league play are as follows. By the way, this is all accurate as of 2:30 on Tuesday, the 19th of May. So I realize that there's matches going on tonight a little bit later on.
There is one result, and just look at Group B just quickly. There was another game played last night by RGM, just for you.
Well, fuck. That's going to fuck me over. All right, well, let's just continue on with our current standings. But yeah, these are all accurate as of Tuesday, the 19th of May, before the matches are taking place. So Group A sees Quality Control and Super Mode taking the first place positions, both being tied up at 2-0 in terms of their series wins and +3 on the game difference. Total Shan then carries out the top 3 position, as they did drop 2 places after getting their initial head start. Team WMB, or With My Boys as they used to be known, currently in 4th position. Georgia Joe lost their first game to sit in 5th, and Zulu Shine in 6th place with 0-2 on their overall loss difference. And of course, Group B sees RGM topping it out with their 3-0. Their most recent victory, of course, being against Someone that happened last night. WLF in 2nd place with their 2-0, and to be playing against the Galaxy Bank side in, I believe, Thursday's matches, if I recall correctly. Yep. What else we got? Esports Berg rising up 2 places to go to the 3rd place position around that top 3 area. Somenham in 4th, Servette Geneva in 5th, and Galaxy Band in 6th. With Galaxy Band still yet to get a victory in on their board at the moment here. So let's talk storylines. Quality Control are the first one I want to focus on, because despite the fact that they announced that they're all going to be looking for different teams going into the next season, they've still established very early sort of stances here in Group A.
Oh, yeah. This is a team of all up-and-comers. Definitely Hibbs and Hakeem are going to be players that I'll be watching out for in the upcoming, RLRS plans, Jay. But we already know what's happening with Archie. Come on, this weekend. I do believe it's this weekend for Fusion. He's going to be on that Veloce roster. He's the lad that made it through the clappers, so he's already sort of broken through that barrier into a little bit of stardom right now. So Quality Control, them topping it, they're showing that. Can you remember back during the Rising Stars, I think it was, before they made it into the Superstar League, that we were saying this is a team that are poorly inconsistent, but they've got so much strength. They've broken through and they've now found some consistency to themselves and are looking good whilst doing it. And we look at where, they dropped a game to Joreuz. Now, Joreuz having Joreuz, apparently Jack and Joy, like that is not bad at all. Dropping a game to them makes sense. And then they dropped 2 games, still getting the win, of course, against Total Sharden, who, RLRS team from last season, Nagflu, Domain, and Tigree. That is not bad at all, is it now?
No, it absolutely isn't. I feel like quality control. I'm not sure whether I'd call it consistency though. Like I think that if they've hit one of their highs, you talk about a team that's inconsistent and they have a lot of firepower, then usually their highs are just really, really high and they're really, really fucking good on those days. I feel like maybe I think it's a little bit too early to call them consistent. If they do get all their results in and they win the whole thing, then fair play. I can call them pretty consistent in that respect. But for me, I feel like quality control started things off on the right foot in their group. I think that their main concern is going to be super mode in week 4 because obviously that's the team that's like really fucking gonna pop off and do some damage because they're currently tied up with them in the first place area. So
and that's with a sub on super mode, by the way. Gooch stepping on in for Lewis P.
I was gonna make a mention to that in our second little bit, obviously, but for quality control, it's a good start. Taking out the likes of Joreuz and the Total Shut-in side is just big stuff to be posted up, I think. And again, with the players that they've got, especially in the case of Archie, it's not too surprising for them. And I think that this will be his last little hurrah in the bubble scene before he goes on to bigger things, from my perspective. So quality control. They got quality control at the moment right now. So let's see if they can keep it going into the next couple of weeks. Spain was the region that we highlighted the biggest sort of development and prospects out of all the teams here. Galaxy Bang and Supremo were the squads that we were like, okay, yeah, these guys are going to go very far. And certainly that's applicable to Supremo, and 2-0 in their own group. And as you mentioned, with a stand-in with the likes of Gooch obviously being there. And Gooch is actually a pretty respectable player. I wasn't expecting Luis, however, or Luis P to be such a... I thought it would be a much bigger sort of loss, I thought, for this Supremo side.
Yeah, definitely. So... anyone with a sub, you sort of write them off at this stage in the tournament, but big stuff, them stepping on up, of course. Super mode, they haven't had hard opponents. They haven't had easy opponents as well. Sorry, with my boys, that fake out Econ, and I do believe they've been summoning Demenza for it, or is it still with Milo? I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's a super powerful roster. And then the other one, Zulu, Taching, Eversax, Ryza, and Sebadam. So Super mode has not had it easy. So big ups to them. Of course, it only gets harder next week, tonight as of recording. They should be going up against Joreuz. So that for me will be the real big turning point, because they've got to see if they can take them down. And then of course quality control afterwards, and they finished there last week, Toshan. So you just look at this and look at each and every team, Jen, you go, they're respectful. Like you got to look at every single match and just go, damn, that's a good result. Like the only 2 teams, again, because we know less of them, Team Somnium and then Esports Berg, you sort of always put those down, but those 2 sides have been doing decent themselves, haven't they?
I was going to say, actually, because Galaxy Bang and the other squad that we mentioned, and they've kind of underwhelmed to me. They've already gone up against some of them in week 1, and that was actually a surprising 3-1 victory for the Somnium side. So, considering how Somnium themselves came in 3rd place overall out of the Spanish leagues, I would have thought that Galaxy Bang would have been able to beat them out anyway, but apparently that was absolutely not the case for them. Their second result came in against Servette Geneva, which was admittedly a 3-2, so it was a down to game 5, but even so, Servette had some pretty good games above them, and considering that they're currently sort of trying out different thirds, they're very, very inconsistent as a result of that. But Toe's been certainly one of the better elements for them. It gave them that it gave them that second place position in the Rocket Baguette Rising Stars. So seeing them right now in the, still being able to take a position above Galaxy Bang, I would have easily put Galaxy Bang to be the victors above Servette Geneva, but that's absolutely not the case right here. And for them, that's a bit of a concern, because Galaxy Bang, they're still a pretty decent squad. And again, some of the players that we looked into this one, we thought, hey, they're going to be some players that, could well be rival series talents alongside Super Mode in the next couple of months. But their performance in this one has not been the best of starts.
Well, straight up, Galaxy Bang with Atomic, you look towards what he's been doing with Magnifico, and you're just there how is he not able to carry over that incredible form here? And It's a little bit bewildering. Again, against Servette Geneva, yeah, you would think Galaxy Bang would get that, but Servette still has that two-core team of Mirrorwing and Servette, and when Mirrorwing, like on that day, looks to be more in form, he can really bang out the goals. So it's an interesting one there. We'll just have to see. But Galaxy Bang right now, it is do or die. And the teams they got left, WLF, eSportsburg, so who knows what happened there, but then RGM. That win against Servette Geneva should have been their redemption. The one against Somnium was like, oh boy, what happened there? But yeah, Galaxy Bang right now, don't know what is going on with that team.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about it. It's just not a very good. It's just not a very good look, I think, for the Galaxy Bang side. And again, considering how much we bigged up Spain to be the best sort of like fucking region out of all the risers in Europe, it's like, well, that's already going to shut us the fuck down, isn't it? You know,
come on, Super Mode.
Come on, Super Mode. Let's go for this one. But for Galaxy Bang on the next couple of weeks, they've got WLF, obviously the team that's currently in second place. And eSportsburg, and after that they've got RJM. Now, RJM, I think they're going to be a very fucking a bad time for the Galaxy Bang side, but for their eSportsburg and WLF results, like they're going to have to score like some 3-0 to try and make up the room between them and that third place position, because these two losses, especially against two teams that you wouldn't have expected them to lose against, like, you know, that's probably going to screw their opportunities at the season finals, you know?
Yeah, the two teams they lost against are the ones that are only on one win in this little league play right now. So they're behind, and they are massively behind. By all means, you could just write Galaxy Bang off right now. They just got to really pull their socks up, because redemption is there, and you got to think their wins would come in massive, but they've got to get all 3 wins right now. And I can't see them doing it, Jay. That is a massive, massive ask.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a bit too much of an ask for Galaxy Bang. I think their season may already be over here. But, you know, officially, there's still a way for that to work. I mean, it requires a lot of losses from Somnium and Servette Geneva, for example. Yeah. So, you know, like, Galaxy Bang will need to get their victories in. And again, like, you know, it's just going to be such a difficult ask for them. So I'm curious to see how they'll handle themselves from here on out. But, yeah, a disaster start may end to a disaster season, all things considered here, Bacon. So... I mean, again, let's go Somnium. And for Somnium, let's go Super Mode, I should say. Actually, Somnium, I guess you could say as well. But for Super Mode,
they've got a chance.
Super Mode especially, like the main thing for those guys is going to be that match against Quality Control for me. Like, that's my fucking highlight of the season right there. Just before it even starts to happen, like that match is going to be so fucking lit.
Oh, definitely. Like, we'll have to see how that'll work out, but... Super Mode, just going forward, I can't wait to see all those matches. Like I said, they've got Georgia Joe tonight, of Tuesday. Probably when you guys listen to this, make sure to tune in on the 26th, next Tuesday, because that's against Quality Control. And that's the one which, Jay, I don't know about you, but that's one I cannot wait for, because that, for me, like, will be the true test of Super Mode. Like, that will probably decide the top 2 of Group A anyway. So I'm excited, boy.
I think we're all excited, I think, for those Spanish teams. But we'll move on and talk about another team that we're also pretty excited for, RJM. Now, obviously, we're talking about this team in the last couple of weeks and how they're making those moves. They brought in Rix Ronde for the sake of Superstar League, and it has been nothing but good times for RJM. They have had Yeah, they have fucking swamped through everybody. I mean, eSportsburg, admittedly, was a bit of a weird one. Obviously, after week 1 was when Rix Ronde really stepped into the fold. So, like, obviously, they haven't had full time to settle in for them. But they've still had a similar sort of series against Servette Geneva. They've still had a similar sort of series against Somnium. Against WLF and Galaxy Bang, I don't see any reason why RJM in this current lineup should be able to have any worries. So, for me, right now, they're looking at the best team in the Superstar League.
Oh, yeah, RJM should be safe in their group. I will say, Jay, though, when I look at this, I think Group A is harder than Group B. Just naturally by seasons, it just worked out that way. But the real tester will be WLF next week, next Thursday the 28th. That'll be, if you haven't worked it out already, Group A plays on Tuesday, Group B plays on Thursday. Simple stuff. But yeah, it will just come down to that. Against WLF, that will be a real enticing watch because WLF so far have sort of like not set a foot wrong. It seems like Arju's pickup on Mouse propelled him to be able to suddenly get this team to its true performance as well. Like he has just gone from, I don't know, top of the, like not even top of the bubble scene, very middle. WLF were always fan favorites, but very much a nothing to really write home about. They had that short stint, I won't say it was a year back or whatever, where they suddenly start bursting through on everything, but then that didn't really go anywhere. And now they're back and they're looking good, and it can all just come down to, I think Arju's confidence these days is massive for this team.
Yeah, and I think that for RJM as a whole, like if they want to stick with Rix Ronde, I think that that's actually going to be the best move for them at the moment. You know, like there's not a whole lot of players on the market. Like I don't see any reason why any other players would want to go to this team. And with Rix Ronde already having that connection in, I think for RJM the next best thing is to step him into the lineup and fucking just rock it there from the rest of the rival series. You know,
and good for sponsors as well. Like, you've lost Justice, but keeping Rix Ronde there, him and Mike Boy, yes, with Rizek, should be able to find a sponsor. I know in the Benelux region, tournaments are becoming quite hard to find, but you'd hopefully be able to get a Dutch sponsor back you up, especially for RORS. Like at the moment, Jay, it seems like that's your better choice, is trying to go and more on a national focus. It's why Notorious Legion picking up Awkward Turtles last season was a bit of like a why didn't you go for an Italian team, if anything like that? But we'll see how it goes. That should be an interesting one, especially with RJM already having a season under the belt. Continuing on to next season's safe, this should be a team which should now be plugging to solidify themselves, like not only in the RORS, but try and hope to stay up in the top half of RORS and be a good enticing option for orgs to then go to LAN and win those. Like they've got to start thinking about their career together, and Rix Ronde with all that experience can only help that, can't he?
Yeah, and I think that all in all, RJM are just benefiting from the short term and hopefully the long term from having him in that roster. So there you go. Those are the main teams we wanted to focus on here for the tournament roundup. Are there any other ones you want to talk about here before we end off things, Bacon? Or
not really. Like I said, the other ones were right off. Servette and Eva are playing with a sub, so what else do you really expect when that sub isn't really up to par? Some of them were a big surprise, but their win came at the cost of another Spanish team, so they should know that team a lot better than others. Georgia Joe have only played one game, and that was a loss to quality control, so we'll see how they do. Yeah, so we'll see how they do going up against With My Boys, which should have been played last week, so I don't know what's going on there. Maybe they've just been delayed to a later date, but yeah, Georgia Joe, we'll make our decision because, again, Group A is a super tough group, and with what's going on with those guys, they should hopefully be really gunning to come up in one of those 3 spots, you know?
Yeah, and I just think that things are looking real good in general for them, so... Yeah, there you go. That's the Rising Stars League, or the Superstar League, I should say, for this week. We'll be back next week to cover even more of that action. In general, we'll just be back to cover even more of the news going into the next week of the Rocket League scene, because we actually have to get out of here. I've got work in about 10 minutes, so probably a good idea if I get the fuck out right now. 2.5 hour broadcast
again, Jay?
mate, none of this ever goes to time, okay? Like, you know, it's original because like, it's great because in the original pitch and the original few shows, we were like, right, hour and a half at best, you know, and as time has gone on, we just found more and more to talk about, and now it just goes 3 hours on the fucking show. So like, you know, we fucking really drilled it in, and hopefully you're all enjoying back at home. Of course, if you are enjoying the content that you have on the podcast, then of course you can go ahead and check out RLAfterShock.com. We've got even more of that content coming up soon. We're gonna put a plan in place to get even more articles out very soon. Obviously, we've been a little bit sort of quiet on that front, I think, because a lot of people have been scrambling to sort their own financial state out because of COVID. Certainly, that's the case for me. You know, like writing was never my first calling, although it will be my last for Rocket League. So that much is certainly for certain. So again, RLAfterShock.com if you want to keep up with all the details and all the news that we're going to be breaking over there. Of course, follow the podcast on Twitter at RLAfterShock, and of course us on Twitter as well at the Eternal J at Digital Bacon 1. And get involved. Let us know if you enjoyed the episode, anything you want to talk about. Of course, can also be talked about in the Discord as well as on Twitter. Again, the link in the show notes and video description of every single episode of the podcast. We have a lot of this. We have a lot of productive discussions, I think, in that Discord. Certainly a lot more productive than Reddit. So if you're tired of Reddit being absolute fucking dribbling idiots, then of course you can go ahead and deal with us dribbling idiots instead on the private Discord instead. So there's also the mailbag section that's going to be coming there, as well as that. Dex is working on community nights. What was it he called it in the Discord again? After hours, which I have to say is a fucking genius idea. Yeah. It's a brilliant idea. So definitely make sure you're getting involved in that. Hopefully my PC will be back in position for that, obviously, since it just crapped out again today. So hey, but all the rest of it. And of course, you can follow the podcast on its regular platforms, on YouTube video versions. Hopefully we can return to having actual video rather than just two fucking pictures on a screen. And of course, the audio versions that are available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and most other audio distribution platforms. You can go to anchor.fm just to find your favorite platform or request your favorite way to listen. I think it's anchor.fm/RLAfterShock is what I was trying to say there. So that's going to be it for the show this week, my friends. Bacon, any final words from you before we head out for another week?
Just with the after hours stuff, I'd love to get some Formula One evenings. Have you seen some of the videos on Twitter from Rocket League players? I want to get that going right now.
Who's the guy? Who's the guy that keeps fucking Archie? He keeps posting those fucking F1 videos of all the pros, and I see speed streaming it the other day. Fucking brilliant.
I think we need to arrange this, and us just doing bullshit casting over it. I think this needs to be done. Dex.
You know what to do, my man. And on that note, we're going to end. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I've been the Eternal J. It's been Digital Bacon, and we'll see you back here next week for even more of the Aftershock.